Hello everyone and welcome to today's session on cybersecurity OT full course by Intellipaat. Gartner defines OT security as practices and technologies used to protect people, assets and information, monitor and control physical devices, processes and events. Also, it initiates state changes to enterprise OT systems. OT security solutions include a wide range of security technologies, from next generation firewalls to security information and event management systems to identity access and management. In this session, we will learn all about what is cybersecurity OT. So without further wait, let's check the agenda for the session.
But before we begin the session, make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you'll never miss any update from us.
Welcome to the ICS security testing session. So we are going to deal with the operation design and vulnerability. So understanding the basics about fundamentals of CIA and under this. And this would be covering like what is cybersecurity, what is an ICS architectures and the security positioning, as well as information security and cybersecurity. How do you differentiate between them? And taking a broad look at the entire confidentiality, integrity, and availability, how these parameters have been in operational technology. Then we talk about what is a vulnerability, what is a threat and risk. So how do you differentiate between these three, and how they are connected, and what kind of an relational impact do we have related to a vulnerability, threat, and risk is what we'll be talking. And then we'll also be discussing on top vulnerabilities in ICS, what are all the general principles of security, and what are all the top incidents that have taken place in OT. Related to this module, the exercises would be understanding the live attacks and exploration of the vulnerable devices online, and evaluating the security posture of the ICS devices, and exercises related to vulnerability risk assessment and reporting outline. So an introduction to that given. Then we talk about network fundamentals. So more or less it remains to be the same, talking about IT security related network fundamentals and OT, more or less same except the Purview model and ICS port and network reference model. So the core idea behind this network fundamentals is understanding the network connectivity, various types of network connectivities that we have, and protocols being used in ICS. Introduction to the networking terminology and concepts, and what are all the common ports do we have, understanding the OSIs, all the 7 layers, and what is the intrusion detection system and what is an intrusion prevention system, and connecting and network data analysis, ICS reference model, as I said earlier, and Purview model. Then we talk about the attack vectors and surface area, where we talk about the threat actors and ICS systems, and what are all the motivations of attacks, what all the types of attackers do we have for the OT, and why they are focused on the ICS assets, ICS attack surface area, and what kind of inputs do we have, various vulnerabilities related to edge access, network and application layers, what is the data leakage that takes place, and what kind of an threat attack model. So this is the core idea behind this is the first one, we are trying to understand the ICS architecture and the CI threat from the point of cybersecurity. What are all the threats, vulnerabilities, threats, and risks do we have? Is what we are trying to understand the first module. And the second one, we are trying to dissect the layer, network layer, and understand what all the layers, what all the layers of network spread across and how they are connected, and what kind of a model has been implemented, security architecture model that has been implemented at the network level, and how this segmentation of the network takes place between the HMI systems as well as enterprise networks, HMI systems and industrial systems that are there. So how do you basically implement the network between them? And then we talk about attack and attack vectors, different types of attackers, and what kind of vectors, what is the surface area do we have for that. So in this, the exercises, lab activity that we are going to cover is related to industrial threat modeling, and then how exactly the threat could be modeled, looking at like how you create a blueprint, an architectural design right? In a similar way, when you put forth your network, lay your network on a map, like how do you identify the data points, which you can term them as an attack points or a vulnerable points, and the flow connecting, like how exactly the data would flow back and forth is what we could talk about a DFD, data flow diagram, and the process flow diagram, based on which how do you conduct an threat analysis that okay, this is the design, this is equipment which I'm going to deploy, and on top of it, this is kind of an security architecture is what I'm going to implement. What all the possible exploitations can it happen over here? Is what we talk here. And also we talk about use case versus misuse case, which is what we refer as an attack trees. So for each one of the architecture or design, what is a use case and what is a misuse case? Then we talk about the threat intelligence. So as we know, in any crimes, to break the crimes, intelligence as a main source. So threat intelligence is also a main source for ICS. And how do you identify recent attacks that are happening on industrial control systems and OT technology? And how do you use that knowledge for the betterment of your own organizational assets? Is what threat intelligence is all about. Then we talk about security management as the next one, as per the ISC 62443 guidelines, OT security. So access via untrusted networks. How is that we're going to handle this access via unsecured network? Purdue level of attacks. Earlier we discussed about Purdue network model over here, and here we are coming up with Purdue attacks. Then what is a denial of service attack, and how is that denial of service attack? Then the spoofing attacks, then the accounts management, identification management, authentication management, password management, Purdue 02, 0 and 1 defenses, safety instrumented systems, all put together is what we are going to cover as a part of security management. Then, as we move on, we'll be covering assessing and managing the risk, understanding what all the risks that are there in OT technology, and what kind of an operational impact do we have, how to be aware of it, and what kind of an risk assessment process do we need to initiate, how to identify, classify, and rank those cyber risks, how to use the results of risk assessment. Then we understand what all the controls. So once we have a risk, we know the risk, then we implement the appropriate controls to control those risks. What all the risk controls that are there, which is also called as security controls. And how do you correlate between security controls and the risk management, and what all the different classes of the security controls are there according to the 62443 guidelines. And then we talk about importance of applying multiple security controls over here, introduction to variety of security catalogs that are there, and how to develop a strategy for deploying a reasonable control systems. So here there'll be a couple of hands-on activity and team discussion will be there. Then we conduct an audit assessing methodology talk, which is understanding the differences between security auditing and assessing testing, reviewing some leading methodologies, and how to tailor those methodologies or apply those knowledge back onto your own organization while conducting any kind of an assessment. Also looking at the theoretical versus security assessment, physical security assessment, and how to perform active and passive. And as in last module of the session, which would cover the standards and best practices related to the audit and assessing, how these standards have been defined. So what kind of scanners or vulnerability scanners are being used, what kind of methodology is being used. And then we talk about how do we customize available tools as per our requirement, is what we are going to talk broadly. We talk about how to various standards that are there OT related to OT security and the applicability. What all the impact do we have for non-compliance of this kind of standards or guidelines? This is where we understand the relationship between the guidelines and the rules that are in position and the law. So that's a broad curriculum is what we are going to cover. So the whole idea behind this training program is to bring the security testing as well as understanding the security posture of the OT systems. So in terms of, it's a strong belief that security is a myth unless it is proved to be secure. So anything that we build and we say that no, our architecture is completely secure. Having said that, still the cyber attacks are going on. So it's something that at time testing that is required, where whatever the technology, whatever the security implementation, whatever the network models or security models that we implement, whether they are really secured or not, is what we need to get a knowledge on, and that's what this program is aimed at. So, taking a brief insights about cybersecurity, before we go there, the first and foremost thing I'd like to discuss with you is the technology growth. Now, we started the journey in 1990s. I still remember when during the time of Bill Clinton as a U.S. president, and international internet gateways are being majorly controlled by U.S. by then, having the most of the internet broader gateways were with them. So there were only few hundreds of websites that were there during that time. Now, all the way down the line from 2020 and 2022, if you see here, it's close to about a billion, millions and millions, which put together could be an application service, could be a web service, all of that. So the overall internet usage has reached to billions of it. So multifolds has taken. The hosts that are available online also reached to a billion now, crossed over. The most important thing that we see is when we started this journey, we started as a pre-internet era. That's where a human-to-human communication could be a fixed, and then it added to a fixed line, or a mobile phone, and subsequently the SMS. So there's some one part of it when you talk about the communication. Then from here we moved on to something called as an internet of content, where we started using the email service, information, entertainment. Though it was not a streaming or watching the videos, but yes, the content started. We started putting the content online. That's what we talk about an internet of content. And subsequently, we moved on to Web 2.0, which is an internet of services, where various services started offering on internet. Could be a file sharing service, could be an streaming service, or audio streaming service, or could be an email information entertainment, which with a better presentation and better session management, security capabilities, the Internet of Services has established its foot. Now, from the Internet of Services, we moved on to Internet of People. Like how we have a citizens, we have a netizens today. Social media, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Sort of well-known social media or netizen sites that we have, where we build an internet of people and internet of presence over here. So this is what it is all about. So the era started with the pre-internet and internet of content, internet of services, internet of people, internet of things is what. I still remember way back when we watched movies like Terminator. So they're like just like a science fiction by then, where a machine controls a machine or a network, right? It was just a science fiction. When we have seen a decade and a half back in movies like Born Legacy, where they use virtual passwords, holographic characters, which would evolve and start using the computers and computing from the. We have seen this in movies. So those are all like a science fictions by then. So teleporting, connecting back to the system. So all of this was a science fiction, but today we see that they're practically there. So machine to machine communication is happening. So this is what we call it as an Internet of Things. Broadly, we can summarize this like we can say that it is a standalone model of computing. From a standalone model computing, it went on to a distributed model computing, which we call it as a, which one would you call as a distributed model computing, folks? Distributed. Then from distributed computing, now we started moving on to the next level that is called as a decentralized computing. So we already moved on to the decentralized. So because your data is being distributed across the nodes, different servers put across, which is connected to one particular network, and which is under your control completely, and it is being distributed. And centrally being, actively there is one particular server, a bridgehead server, which would maintain the reposition where exactly this data, which on which server. For example, if you take the AWS is having a different regions in the cloud computing. So your data, whatever you put onto the AWS, so based on the region that you select, your data would be placed within that particular region of the data centers. So that's how the distribution would go on. The best example for decentralized is nothing but a blockchain technology that we are hearing today, blockchain technology as a decentralized. For example, a torrent technology that we use, the torrents that usually people use to, torrent has turned out to be an abusive word, especially related to copyright and intellectual properties. But actually, a torrent is a methodology with which basically you can decentrally distribute any files with a headless architecture. So that's a decentralized blockchain technology is one of the references that we could give related to the decentralization. From decentralization, will be next getting on to a mode of quantum. So that's how the journey been moving on. You see that the web technology, which is connected simply as a browser, actually, and now it has moved on to mobile applications. Then further from mobile applications, it moved on to cyber physical systems of IoT devices. There's a positive growth, positive side of the growth. So in a simple way, it started with the 1G communication, which is a first generation communication. By then, it was just called as a Nordic mobile. When the mobile phone started, it's called as a Nordic mobile. So Nordic mobiles were a Scandinavian technology which has initially evolved, like basically to talk about the GSM network. So it was designed for a specific purpose to communicate within closed circuit community. That's why it is called as a group special mobile. But subsequently, it moved on and changed its form to a group system mobile communication. So where from a 1G first generation technology, it moved on to a second generation technology where an SMS or a short message service got added to a voice communication. So it was just initially a voice communication in the first generation. With the 3G, we all started seeing and sensing using that, right? So the internet connectivity. And though you have internet connectivity in 2G, it was more like a GPRS or a HSDPA kind of technology that is to be there. And further, more usage has been by using. By then, it was just the WAP servers or a BlackBerry services are being used for the 2G, which is more of like text communications. And from 3G, it moved on to 4G technology. Along with the voice communication, some as the video data we started using that huge content, accessing that entertainment data and connecting those devices like smart TV or whatever we have. And then we in 2020, which is before the pandemic, is expected to be rollout of 5G, but it got delayed, but it's still going in a much better pace. Where it's not just a service, but it turned out to be an ultra service in terms of adding the high-end cryptographic transactions, which is like encryption and decryption, would become easier. And also connecting your fleet management, automotives, everything, bringing everything onto one particular network. And more importantly, the 5G would be have a two-prong approach in a positive notion as well as negative notion. So which we had been seeing various case studies of 5G already, but inevitably it will bring better results for the mankind. Then down the line, we are looking towards 6G technology in 2030, which is going to be along with internet voice calls, SMS, and internet activity and multimedia content, IMS, which is called as an IMS multimedia content, IP multimedia subset system features. Along with that, artificial intelligence would also be an addition. Here, the cryptography, encryption and decryption, so using the high-end cryptographic technology is what one of the example you can say is a blockchain. Using the blockchain for the for the transactional database would become easier because it takes a longer time to solve a mathematical problem that you define with this cryptographic algorithms. So if the network is slow, it will take a longer time to authenticate or authorize. So when you have a better network, it will bring results quickly. As I said, in 2030, the moment 6G rolls out, along with the artificial intelligence, machine learning will also take a lot of stand over here, and which would be the next wave of the technology. Along with the positive side, we have a threats that are looking on the other side of it. So let me just show you. Right now, what you're seeing on my screen is nothing but a real-time attack that is happening. Somewhere in some part of the world, a new malware evolves. You see here, the metrics, the triggers that you see here, those are all the attacks. The moment we talk, these are the attacks that are happening across the world at different points. These are the probing points. This is called as a heat map It's actually called as a threat map or a heat map. So where exactly the heat is being generated across the world. So this will show you the metrics of what kind of a malware related attacks that are happening, what is new malwares that are evolving on a day-to-day basis. So all of this, so one country to the other country, attacks that are happening, you can find this. You see here, these are the new malwares, folks. When you look at it, these are the new malwares that are coming up. So you see the target severity level of this malwares and location from where it's evolving and how this, what type of malware is that? It's an Ajax-based malware. See, right now, the Ajax-based malware attack is happening from this particular location, Mexico. And we cannot say that it is from Mexico. The reason is very simple. If it is a VPN-based attack, where proxy-based attack, it would be attacker might be somewhere else here or somewhere else here, but he is using the IP address of Mexico. He might be using IP address of Mexico to launch the attack or using some of these proofs. So it is something like I'm firing the gun, but I'm using your shoulder to fire the gun, to fire the bullet, right? So that's as simple as like the VPN connectivity, using a VPN connectivity. Like if you see here, do you see the VPN tool now in front of you? Do you see the VPN tool? I'm being in India. I can pick any of these countries and connect to any of these countries right from here, any of these countries, and make you feel that when you see here, because if I switch the network right now, I might be disconnected for a moment. That's why I'm not trying. But the moment Google will also recognize me as if I am from a different country. So this is what we call it as a proxy using a VPN. We proxy using a VPN. So we use different methods to disguise or maintain the anonymity across and internet. So one of that is the VPN, virtual private network. So even the tools, what we use, they also believe that as a fear from that place for a moment, maybe including the Google. So just give me a moment, please hold on. I'll just try to switch over without much of a disruption and show you how exactly this gets connected. So please hold on for a moment. I'm switching over the network. If something goes wrong, I'll fall back. I'll connect back to the terminal. And back to Slovakia right now. So you see here, this is one more threat map, which will show you like the attacks, daily attacks that is happening. So this is a heat map of Checkpoint. It's a security manufacturing company which does antivirus as well as firewalls and gateways, security gateways, IDS and IPS systems. So according to their threat map, these are all the locations from which the attacks are happening. These are the top targeted countries from which the attacks are happening. And these are the top targeted industries which are undergoing the attack. These are the top malwares which are on the top of the list at this particular point in time. Right, the point when we talk to each other, there's a new attack, a new technology, a new exploitation that will be evolving, and you see that the output over here. Cybersecurity, according to me, in a nutshell, if you ask me, if I put across, is like a vigilant falcon. It's a vigilant falcon with which monitors 360 degrees of an enterprise, right from a physical security to the application layer security, right from the doorman to the chairman of the organization, citizen to the president of country. So everybody is covered more or less under the cybersecurity today. Because the reason is very simple. Tell me one place where you don't find the applicability of cyberspace or IT computer today. Ibno's message would actually speak loud what I'm trying to put across. There are various types of computers you have. You have it starts with an 8-bit computer. It could be a 16-bit where it could be a CPU, it could be a microcontroller, right? It could be a microcontroller based computer, or it could be a 32-bit computer. It could be a 64-bit computer. When you open your wallet, you find the card and bank cards, which are a debit card or a credit card, right? There is a EMV chip. There is an EMV chip on these cards. EMV chip on this card, on those debit cards, right? And also you have an Wi-Fi component on these credit cards, because these days you don't need to swipe the card instead, but you can tap the card, and Wi-Fi, based on Wi-Fi, it will detect and it will reduce, or it will deduce the account or charge your account, right? So that's an EMV chip based card. So that means, that goes to say that there is a microcontroller over here. So microcontroller is more or less like a SOC. When I say SOC, in a simple words, SOC means Please do not get confused with these terminologies. I understand, folks, that it's the first time you're coming across. At times we use homophones, that is, sounds like same, but they're not the same. Here, the SOC, what I'm talking about, is a system on chip. From a computer system engineering perspective, the SOC is nothing but system on chip. In one single chip, the entire system will be there, entire computer will be there. That's what we call it as a SOC. So it's a SOC with Wi-Fi component. So that means there should be a nano cell also. If not, how come when you tap your card to the POS machine, card is giving a signal to the POS machine, hey, look, that I have connected to this particular account, and you can now charge me, or you can deduce the amount. So that goes to say that on your in your wallet also you're carrying computers. So computers are spread everywhere. Each computer, for example, each card if you take, it will be around 400 to 500 KB of the data storage space that will be there with the TMB chip, and hardly it will be 100 or 150 KB of the data that it should have been written with your 16-digit card number and related credential would be there. But apart from that, the information, there is a space, storage space, which can be written by somebody else remotely or wirelessly. So that's a threat. That's why we call it as in cyber warfare. So it's connected everywhere. That's what we are trying to say here. So what happens at the 60 seconds, as I've shown you earlier, is that positive side on 60 seconds on the internet, there are new 16 to 20 new songs gets added and 70 new domains get registered per minute. Per minute, 70 different new domains are getting registered, and 15,000 tracks are being played on iTunes. So across the world, this dynamics, and 571 websites are created, 371 WordPress, 204 million emails broadly are being communicated per minute. We are talking about across the world. Average of $83,000 transaction is happening every minute while we talk here, and 278 thousands of tweet, and 81.8 million Facebook plays, and many more. Or 2 million searches takes place per minute. Negative side of it, you see that the attacks at the same time, which I've shown you some time back on a threat map, so that takes place at the same time. Different countries, different types of ports and services, different types of attacks that are happening. So that's a broader scenario. Nobody is exempted. As when I said about cybersecurity, cybersecurity is as a vigilant falcon, so which covers the entire enterprise or the technology under its wings, covering from all physical security to the application layer, physical access to the application layer, which is built across defined based on the people and the process that are being used and the technology that is deployed. So people, process, and technology is the foundation pillars of rolling out or building any effective security. We see that there are a lot of action happening from for last 2 years, especially in the pandemic. What's a recent cyber attack have you ever heard of? Whatever the recent cyber attack, because we have seen the cyber attacks that are happening here, right? So what's the reason do you think these attacks are happening, or what is the recent cyber attack that you have heard of? Any case study, any attack that you heard, any personal experience have you ever come across and felt that yes, this is something fishy and this is something not correct in terms of security? Printer attack in Russia due to the Ukraine war. All right, right. Have you ever heard about an attack by Lazarus Group on Bangladesh Bank? It's a similar kind of an attack that has taken place. Yes, this is one of the recent attack. Microsoft vulnerability was there, and then yeah, scam text messages is quite popular. Before I go and talk more about this, I would like to hear from you. How do you differentiate what is an event? I'm not talking about whether it's security event or non-security event, or like how do you differentiate in general? How do you differentiate an event from an incident and a crime? How do you differentiate between these three? Event, incident, and crime. So there's an event which would lead to an incident which would lead to an crime. The event is something arised basically like as a part of the process, as a part of the in a day when you start, right? So there'll be several events, right, from the get up to the end of the day. out of those events, there could be one thing which can turn out into an incident, might be, could be, right? There might be a chance. And that incident, for example, somebody steals my purse outside. So I'll losing the money as an incident in that wallet. Maybe a person who has done that is a crime, involvement of it. So if you look at it, an event, incident, and crime, they're closely connected. Most of these cyber crimes that takes place, so possibly there could be some kind of an intention of either the siphoning money or revenge or a retaliation could be the reason behind this. Most of the times that it takes place now, we see that these are the statistics. The red color, what you see here, is a cyber crime. Out of the events that are recorded, the incidents that are recorded for a particular period of 1 month from 30th October, you see the 60 to 70%, 75% of the incident, whatever the incidents that have taken place, those are all a cyber crime.
Just a quick info, guys. Test your knowledge of cybersecurity by answering this question. What is code red? A. An antivirus program. B. A photo editing software. C. A computer virus. D. A video editing software. Comment your answer in the comment section below. Subscribe to Intellipaat to know the right answer. Now, let's continue with the session. Just a quick info, guys. If you want to make a career in cybersecurity, then Intellipaat has a post-graduation certification in cybersecurity and ethical hacking by ENICT Academy, MNIT Jaipur. This course is of very high quality and cost-effective, as it is taught by MNIT professors and industry experts.
Cybercrime could be some kind of an DDoS attack, some kind of the attacks that are happening on enterprises, the attacks that are happening on industrial computer systems, attacks that are happening applications, or attacks that are happening on the bank accounts and stealing the money from the bank accounts. And second is the cyber espionage. Espionage, cyber espionage is nothing but spying on the peer organizations, maybe the organizations which are within the same fraternity. We can call this as an unhealthy competitive intelligence or competitor intelligence. So the Yokogawa competitor would try to conduct an espionage on Yokogawa, right? Or try to conduct an activity which will gather what kind of a business Yokogawa is looking at. What are all the new segments of business? How is Yokogawa maintaining its clients? What kind of an service offerings does Yokogawa has, and what kind of an assurance, quality assurance or security assurance Yokogawa is giving? So, and who are all the key elements that are involved? Who are all the key employees that are involved? What is the background of those employees and how best they are connected with their organization? And is there any rift between the employee to employee? Is there any rift between the employee to the manager, particular X to Y, Y to Z? So running this kind of an intelligence on any of the organization or any of the country is what we call it as espionage. So with that, they understand your weakness and your strength. So then they'll try to exploit your weakness and take control of yourself. And whatever I have shown you on the threat maps is what we call it as in cyber warfare. Cyber warfare is the one which basically launch a war, take and head on. So there could be a reason where they want to show their strength, that they are stronger than the other. There could be multiple reasons why the cyber warfare takes place. And then you have hacktivism. Hacktivism is nothing but hacking the system and particular system to show that they have the knowledge of out of the inquest, out of the interest. Script kiddies might be doing hacking, or could be people who is having knowledge of IT security could be trying to hack the system. So this is what hacktivism is all about. So these are 87% is what a cybercrime within the October it is identified, and 8.1% is in cyber espionage, and rest of all small elements. The attack types that are there during that particular period, malware, using the malware is what the attack takes place majority, and rest of all like unknown, because this is a worrisome area for every organization. So every organization, they know like what kind of an attack or exploitation it is happening. An account takeover, vulnerabilities, identifying the vulnerabilities, targeted attacks, DDoS or defacement of the network. So various different types of attacks and attack techniques takes place. So this is one of the biggest challenge that we have. The industries wise, if you look at it in October, so right from the multiple industries that have undergone the attack, like individuals, human health and social work, education, professional, scientific and technical, maybe manufacturing, information, communication, all put together. This a major chunk goes with the multiple industries across. So these are the top industries which have undergone the attack, like healthcare, manufacturing, various other manufacturing industries, and financial services, government, and the transportation sector are the top victims of last few months. So now we talk about what all the different types of hackers we have. I hope my screen is visible to you all, the slides and slide screen, and my voice is loud and clear. So white hat hackers are the individuals, like the people like us, who learn the hacking techniques and similar kind of techniques that the bad guys have, but they are the good guys. Their intention is to protect the organizational assets. So the people who wanted to learn the cybersecurity to know the same kind of hacking methodologies what attacker use, a similar kind of hacking methodologies they learn, and they use these methodologies to basically protect, to find the loopholes within their own organizational assets, and that's what the white hat people will do. They are the good guys basically. They use the same technology. Basically, a hacker is a guy who has now a very good understanding on a computer architectures, networking, system engineering, as well as network engineering and application architectures. You don't need not to be a coder, not required to be a coder. So all you would need is a good understanding on the overall IT system architecture, right from the hardware to the application level, and a bit of shell coding or shell scripting. Learning the basics of Python would definitely be an additional advantage for an hacker. Hacker could be a positive or a negative notion. It could be used. It has evolved almost in 1960s onwards. This word has been coming up. It was first come up in MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where they started using like copy Control C and Control V, using a shortcut from a regular way of coding. They started using the shortcuts for it. So which is what they used a term called as an hack. That's how the first time the word has been heard by the world. After that, hacking is nothing but taking something in a shortcut way, taking over a complete system. That's what it is in hacking. So the black hats are another type of hackers who are with the malified intentions and with the destructive motives. They try to hack the system. Like so, their intention itself is a destructive motive, and these are the bad guys. These are the guys who has a negative on a negative notion. They try to use this technology or the learnings that they have. They are the black hat guys, the black hat hackers, who are also called as crackers. They hack the system. They hack the account to siphon the money, then take over the organizational assets. Right. So that's what a black hat is all about. Then we talk about a gray hat. Gray hat are the individuals work both on offensive and defensive side. Gray hat is the guys like they are like I hope most of you have watched some of you at least watched Transporter movie, right? Transporter. Transporter is kind of a character in that movie. Like we cannot say he's a good guy or bad guy. He doesn't care what it is. He just takes the packet and drops the packet. Like a Rambo, who basically can work on a good side and bad side of it. Like a sniper, sharpshooter, who has a special set of skills, who can take the advantage based on the condition and situation. May get onto any of the shoes, and take advantage of it. So that's the gray hatters is all about. They don't have a specific motive, offensive or defensive motive, but what is beneficial for them is what they look into it. That's the gray hats. Then we have somebody called as strip kiddies. They are the people like somebody who come online, right? So how to hack a Gmail account, how to hack a Yahoo account, how to hack an Instagram account. So the kind of searches they do, and they try to follow a couple of hacking videos and try to implement those videos. They don't have their own ability or understanding or knowledge of system engineering, network engineering, or application engineering. They can't write a Python script. They can't develop a tool by themselves, or suggest or use an appropriate tool by themselves. So these are nothing but the script kiddies. They just follow. Someone has done something, so they just follow, try to do this. That's another kind of hackers. So primarily these three are the major bothering points. So rest two are also subsets of these three. So cyber terrorists are the individuals with a strong religious belief, or could be a political belief, and they try to intrude into the systems and the network to create the fear and showcase ability and power. So that's cyber terrorists is all about. The organizational motive is to show the strength over another community, show the ability over another community. State-sponsored hackers, or the individuals are employed by the countries to penetrate into other country networks, systems, and governments. Have you heard any of this case? Any of such kind of a case till now? Any of state-sponsored hacker case? Have you ever heard about it? Have you ever heard about Colonial Pipeline, US Colonial Pipeline, 2021? That was a state-sponsored attack. Have you ever heard about a Kudankulan attack in India on a nuclear power grid, a nuclear power plant? That was also kind of a state-sponsored attack. Have you heard about an attack on Sony Entertainment, where the content worth of 100 million plus of content has been released into the air? So, which is a state-sponsored attack. Sony Entertainment has shot a movie on a gentleman, which is like making fun out of him. Like it just hurt the feelings of that gentleman, and it was said it's a conspiracy theory or a Hippocratic theory. We are least bothered about it, but most importantly, they have declared themselves also that they are behind this. Been hired by Guardians of Peace. Guardians of Peace is a group who had been hired by that country president. So for the movie they called as an the interview, right, for that. And they had been that particular country has hired this hacker group called Guardians of Peace and made a ransom deal. And the idea is to take over the Sony Entertainment network and release the unreleased videos. So that's what the idea is all about, and which has been successfully being done. So that's because of that, standing chairman of that particular company has to step down. So that's one of the attacks. Colonial Pipeline attack is a 2021 attack, US Colonial Pipeline attack, where the fuel supply, supply chain management system was entirely affected, and it's been taken over by a particular group called as an outside rebel group, who has taken control over the US Colonial Pipeline and demanded to pay $70 million, but finally it got settled to less than that. So, where because of which the country like US has to undergo a pain of declaring an emergency for shortfall of the fuel supply. So this kind of attacks that do happen, and those are most of them. Such kind of attacks are state-sponsored attacks. So how many societies do you know? One society where we know each other, where we can identify individually each other, and with a name, with identification, we have this. And second society is the internet, where we are connected like a netizens with a Twitter handler, could be a Facebook ID, could be an Instagram ID, right? And then we start talking to the people and get connecting to the people, right? That's another society that is netizen society, which is connected with each other. Then you have something called as a dark web. So what is a dark web? This is where my body goes on. So dark web is a place of illegitimate things. Internet is broadly classified into three layers. Layer 1 is a surface web. Layer 1 is a surface web. Layer 2 is a deep web. Layer 3 is a dark web. Do you know, out of the overall data that is available online, it is just 4 to 5% of the data that is available to Google. Whatever you ask Google, Google is replying back to you quickly, right? Within a short time, Google gives you reply and gives you the input or the information. The information, that overall information that you are getting, is just the 4% of the data that is available across the internet. So where is this 96% of the data? Where is it located? For example, let me ask you a questions like this. Is your IC related information, like that's a citizen ID number related information? For India, an Aadhaar related information, Aadhaar card, which is citizen related information. For US, it's a SSN information is there. Right? So whether these informations are now, whether they are there online on the internet, whether they are connected to internet or not, is my first question. Is your medical reports that are there online, is it connected to internet or not? Yes, no. Is it connected? The data, the government is maintaining this data, right? Is the data is available online? Yes, no. Yes, the data is there online, but only available to your eyes because your credentials are being attached to it. There is some kind of an automatic process or OTP process, or could be some kind of an authentication code process that is assigned so that you can access your citizen data online. So this is what we call it as a deep web. Whatever your education qualification related information is there from your universities, all that information is also there online. This is all part of the deep web. Deep web is nothing but could be the deep web consists of your medical records, could be your legal documents, could be the scientific reports, could be the subscriptions that you take, could be a competitor websites, could be academic information, could be a multilingual databases, could be your financial tax returns, could be the government resources, could be organization specific repositories like your codes, like when a software code that you develop. So it is provided as a firmware repository for your client, but it is only available to your client. So that falls under deep web because it is tagged with username and password. Surface web is nothing but the data which can be freely crawled. That's what a surface web is all about. Deep web cannot be crawled because we need to enter user ID and password. It is not possible to crawl and it is not freely defined. And dark web is an network, a subnetwork or the network which is built on the Tor browser, which is the Onion router. Tor stands for, which is developed basically by Navy SEALs, US Navy SEALs, and for their internal communication, which was subsequently rolled out to the common people, the Tor, to maintain the anonymity. Tor stands for the Onion router. So this is one of the decentralized technologies. So they are all nodes. For example, if you are going to connect with the Tor browser will be connected to the Tor network. So this could be your system could be one of the node in that. If you permit, I can host my website on your system. So that's one way of doing it. So and it's in hex format. You find the URL to be. So URL is not in a human readable format. The dark web websites. How does Google work? Because whatever you're asking, Google is giving immediately the information, right? So how does the Google work? So does it maintain any database at the backend? If yes, what database does it maintain? How is it giving the so much information the moment you ask in a snap and like a zap, it quickly pulls up and gives you the information right in front of you. And these days, even if you don't ask Google when you are talking, Google is proactively giving you a support of recording whatever or maybe sensing whatever we are talking by using the Android microphone, right? So option which you have permitted maybe. So with that, it is identifying and understanding using the artificial intelligence algorithm based algorithms, like what would be your next requirement. Right now you have purchased an X, then what would be your next Y requirement is going to be. So to that extent, Google has come up. Now, how this data has been maintained by Google about a website or content? Is there any database there at the backend? Let's say this nc.com is your website. This is a content. Your website is having a home button, about us, products button, services button, contact us button. So whenever you develop to comply with the Google norms to make your website to appear in the search, top 10 searches or top 1 search of the Google, so that the business will come to you, so that the customers will come to you. To make it possible, Google has defined a stipulated norms to maintain a website, out of which first one is you have to generate something called sitemap.xml file. You have to generate sitemap.xml file for each one of the website, which will define the layout sitemap.xml file. Then you have that sitemap.xml would be connected pointed to robots.txt file. Sitemap.xml will be connected to robots.txt file, and robots.txt file is the one which the Google crawlers will talk to. Whenever there is a update, Google crawler will talk to your robots.txt, and it will pull the entire snapshot of the website, and it will index. It will identify the wordings, and it will index on the search engine. This is how it works. That's how Google would crawl the information on the surface web. In the deep web, as I told you, these are the records that are there. In dark web, data, and most of the dark web, 95% of the activities that take place on the dark web is illegal and illegitimate. Like what happens in the dark web? Sales of drugs, sales of the arms and ammunition, sales of illegal things. So which is the anti-social activities to take place, and also sales of women trafficking, child pornography. These are all. It's a hub of illegitimate things. That's what a dark web is all about. And not only that, for example, I'm a competitor of Yokogawa. I wanted to get the proprietary information firmwares of Yokogawa. It's not wonder to say that even right from the nuclear missile information to an ordinary credit card information, everything has been stolen and sold on the dark web. Classified documents and classified information. So that's quite vulnerable. You see here, now I'm in India, I connected to a UK website. Then I opened the Tor browser. And when I connected to this URL using this Tor browser, from my browser, it went to Germany. From there to Norway. My connection went to Germany, Germany to Norway, Norway again back to Germany. From there to different unknown relays to pass through, and finally reach to this particular URL. So it is literally impossible to track or pass through these network nodes and to identify from which node where this crime has been taken place, because there is a multiple layers. First and foremost is I connected to UK to different IP address here. Second is that from there I'm connecting to these many nodes one after the other. So it is complexive to identify. It's complexive to see that possibly kind of exploitation that takes place over here. For the law enforcement agencies as well as for the technocrats, it becomes really tough to identify from which source it has taken place. So that's how dark web makes life more critical and more tough. The pressing concerns today for the organizations is the weakness and our identifying the weakness and strength in the technology. And most important is that do we know all of our assets? Because as I said this morning, how many computers are there around you? Do we have security for all those computers which are surrounded around you? Are we looking at each and every possible source from which the data can go out? Have we blocked all of them? Is there any interfacing there? I mean, it is not just the LAN cabling, or it is not just the wireless network connectivity, but is there anything else other than these two? Is it there which is interacting with the asset? So what could be the vulnerability of it? What could be the threat of it? The most important is that is our industry under attack? Yes, it is under attack. Who are the threat actors do we see? Threat actors are people like could be the hackers, could be the malware. What all the so these are the pressing concerns. And the most important is that should I take a reactive approach or a proactive approach? Now I would like to learn this from you folks. According to you, cybersecurity is a reactive approach or a proactive approach? Implementation of cybersecurity is a reactive or a proactive? It is actually both reactive and proactive. It is reactive in terms of whenever there is an incident takes place, to do a post-fact analysis, to conduct an autopsy on the network attacks or system attacks. It's a reactive. Learning about a criminal, learning about an attacker, learning about a threat, and building the security strong is a proactive, like running a threat intelligence, hunting the threats, threat hunting, and implementation of remediation, conducting an vulnerability analysis, assessing the risk, assessing the possibility of threat exploitation, and assessing, conducting a risk analysis and evolving a risk assessment, right? And finally, based on the outcome or output of the risk assessment, compiling a report with a risk management report or risk analysis report, and implementing those remediation recommendations back is what it is all about. That could be, these are all the activities that are proactive. Cybercrimes, as we discussed earlier, cybercrimes is a fast growing area of crime which is spread convenience and anonymity over the internet by design is one of the driving factors for the cybercriminal. More importantly, the decentralized structure. A person who is sitting in India, a person who is sitting in Bangladesh, a person who is sitting in China, and the victim is sitting in UK or a US or in India or in China, Bangladesh, anywhere. So two different locations, let's say. The attacker is in India and the asset holder is in US. Now the exploitation takes place. Now where should he go? Now, for example, from his account, a $10,000 has been siphoned. Where should he go and complain? Okay, if it is complained, under which law the criminal has to be prosecuted? How to find the criminal, first of all? Because I've shown you from my VPN network, I connected to a Tor browser. From Tor browser, I connected to another VPN, another VPN, another VPN. And slowly, I just moved on. So how do I find him? Where is this criminal who has used the $10,000 or who has siphoned the $10,000 of a person who has attended a superannuation? That's an retired person, retired, and who is now post to their retirement, whatever the benefits that are superannuation benefits, the money has been stolen from and 65 or 70 years old people who doesn't understand technology much, and unknowingly they have clicked on the phishing link. So these are all kind of advantages that criminals are looking at. For example, somebody picks a photograph of some X, Y, Z and marks that photograph and says that if you're not going to send me $1,000, I'm going to post this everywhere on the internet, every possible place over the internet. So that's one of the driving factors, the kind of anonymity that you maintain. So that's a disadvantage what it could be to maintain the cyber peace. This is, as I said, 1820 is the first cybercrime that was recorded, and ever since then, there is a flow of events that are taking place from historically chronological order. In 1971, 78, this first spam email have come up. The first virus was installed on an Apple computer in 1982, and the first word dawn of hacking, which is where the hack started in Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Massachusetts. That's where they use this programming shortcuts. The elder days in hacking is where the John Draper, a guy who was in 1970s, has identified that in a toy whistle, and that whistle, which has been sent sold along with the Captain Crunch cereal, gives a 2600 hertz signal as an output. And using that signal, he has created a box called as an blue box, Draper blue boxes. So these Draper blue boxes, I think, should be there. This is a called as an Draper blue box. These devices, which is an AT&T reverse signal device, which has been created by this gentleman called John Draper. He is the one who has created that kind of device for first time. Who has done a reverse signaling process on 2600 hertz. There is a DTMF signaling system that was used, which is called as a dual tone multiple frequency signaling, using which he has sent a reverse signal and stopped the billing and creating a loss to AT&T. This is what John Draper has sent, and this was sold by two important people. One is Steve Jobs, and second is Steve Wozniak, who has sold this John Draper boxes by then, back in 1970s. Who has marketed those boxes. 1980, cyberspace coined 414 arrested two hackers, and this is where first time an arrest has taken place. Prosecution has come in. 1990s, a national crackdown has taken place, and Kevin Mitnick is the one who got arrested by then. They subsequently built RSA organization. So that's about the cybercrimes. Cybercrimes are broadly classified as of two types. One is where the computer is used as a weapon, and or a computer is used as a target. If a computer is used as a weapon, then kind of a crime could be attacker crime, which could be an offensive crime, and if it is a target, so which would be victimized. So the usually computer used as a weapon would be the attacker's machine. These are a few of the historically well-known hackers. Why is his name according to the list of hackers? Any idea? Anyone knows who is it? James Torvalds. Do you know that the hacker is gaining that lot of attraction, lot of attention these days? So he's gaining a lot of attractions happening. The very good attention is being paid for the hacker. If you type in Google, the hacker, now the hits might be improved more. In fact, could be changed more. So you see that there's a lot of hits, a lot of content of the name hacker today. So that's a kind of a demand that we have, and that shows like what kind of an exploitation or what kind of an attacks that takes place. There are two different types of assets. One is a tangible asset, second is an intangible asset. A tangible asset which you can touch and feel, like a hardware, right? So the devices that are there, and intangible assets are like software and data. intangible assets, which are there, which are existing. You cannot touch and feel it, right? But yes, they are there. They have a value. They deserve a security and a protection, so along with the security system, physical systems that are there. According to the BS standard, British standard ISO 27002, information is an asset. The data that is there is an asset. Like important business assets, has a value to the organization, consequently needs a suitable and protected. InfoSec, as per ISO or IEC 27000, is information security deals with the preservation of confidentiality, integrity, availability of information. In addition to that, you also need to maintain accountability and non-repudiation. What is non-repudiation? Any idea? What is the word non-repudiation is all about? Denying the fact conveniently opposed to the action they have done it. So I've done something, and at my convenience, I'm denying the fact that I haven't done it. For example, during this training program, I'm going to teach you certain offensive techniques. Maybe someone might use this technique for illegitimate purpose or something which is not really good. And that particular case might go to a law enforcement agency. The agency might ask, how did you know? How did you know how to do it? And where did you learn it? Then you say that.
Just a quick info, guys. Test your knowledge of cybersecurity by answering this question. What is Code Red? A. An antivirus program. B. A photo editing software. C. A computer virus. D. A video editing software. Comment your answer in the comment section below. Subscribe to Intellipaat to know the right answer. Now, let's continue with the session. Just a quick info, guys. If you want to make a career in cybersecurity, then Intellipaat has a post-graduation certification in cybersecurity and ethical hacking by ENICT Academy, MNIT Jaipur. This course is of very high quality and cost-effective, as it is taught by MNIT professors and industry experts.
I've attended a course, and in which Vinod was a trainer in that, and he is the one who has made me learn this offensive technique. Now, I conveniently deny that I never knew you, I never interacted with you, nor I have delivered any kind of training for you. Denying this kind of an taking convenient stand, something like this, is what a non-repudiation is. So, how to address that? It has to address that tomorrow I should not give a convenient answer. So, it should be proven. Yes, Vinod was there in the session. He is the one who has told this. To establish this, there is something called as a log, Microsoft Teams log that is there, and the video is being recorded. So, various other options are there, with which basically it becomes repudiate. The value of the asset purely depends upon a user's perspective, owner's perspective. It may be each asset might be having some might be having a monetary value, some might be having a non-monetary value. For example, the projections that you have planned for your next 5 years business of your company might not have a monetary value, but it has a huge that particular report has a huge non-monetary value. The vulnerabilities that you found on the one of your system might not be having a monetary value, but they might be having a non-monetary value for it. So when we say asset value is a user depends upon user and user perspective. Why? Asset information asset, which is a data, is also to be considered as an asset. And I say that the value purely depends upon the user's perspective. The reason is the data what you are holding today might become obsolete tomorrow, as of tomorrow. Maybe 2021 you have a sales pipeline or a sales figures. What January 2021? What is the value of that particular data in January 2022? Anyone from the session? Let's say you have a client information. So you got someone else client information of 2021 and you got a client information of 2022 of your competitor. Which one is valuable for you? Understand? Like Yokogawa, there is a competitor. So you got the details of your competitor customer list, which is of 2021. And second list you got January 2022. First one is January 2021. Which one is valuable for you and why? Yes, it is 2022. So because based on the user's perspective, and the data might have become obsolete because customers might have been look for something or some other options, or maybe they have dropped to purchase. There could be one or two people who has maybe postponed. So various combinations. So whatever that has done, they'll not be waiting for 1 year for this kind of a product when you know that. So 2021 data will be useful for you. Assets are often personal, time dependent, and often imprecise. Why it is person often imprecise is because the asset value, what you think about the data that you are having in your laptop, would be, I mean, a high value, maybe $100,000, maybe a $500,000, maybe a millions or millions of dollars or a billion of dollars. But the point is that for me, the data has no value. It might not be useful for me. I don't understand your business language, or your business model, or I'm not into that business at all. For me, it has very less value, very minimal value. And more importantly, as we discussed earlier, time dependent. And third is it's often imprecise. Why? It's often imprecise is because most of the times the data will be updating. Whatever you get, the data might be, as of now, might be correct, or data state there might be a change that might have come to the data. So data or any kind of information that will undergo these particular statuses: created, stored, destroyed, and processed, transmitted, usage, corrupted, and lost or stolen. That is how the information status is being updated. Be different types of information, like could be printed, stored, transmitted by post, or could be shown on the videos, could be shown on the display. So that's about assets. Now these assets will undergo these assets might consist of vulnerabilities. How do you define a crown jewel? Have you ever heard about a crown jewel? You might be having 100 properties or 100 assets with you, but out of which the topmost valuable assets will be one or two or three, right? So could be assets. When I say anything, could be right from your laptop, mobile to property, right? So out of the whole set of assets you have in and around you, one or two would be topmost assets based on the value, and second is based on the criticality. So for every organization, there will be hundreds of servers that will be there. But which one of the server, if it undergoes, the reputation will be completely damaged. Which one is the server which might affect the entire system badly? All of this put together is what defines a crown jewel. For example, organization website is a crown jewel. Organizational ability or DHCP server or any kind of a wireless LAN, any of this services oriented servers are called as crown jewels. Crown jewels are nothing but machine critical elements. If that particular crown jewel goes down, entire business will stand still. So that kind of servers, that kind of for example, website. If a website goes down for a day or for 5 hours or 6 hours because of a hacking attack, so that is going to be a very huge reputational loss. So that's the reason why it's very important to have. You need to understand the list of it based on identify the mission critical elements. So it could be a database server, it could be a web server, and assess the adversarial threats for these assets first on a first priority. Whenever you start advertising, assessing and identifying the adversaries, so it's very important. First of all, you have to identify for these assets, then only you move on to the next ones. Determine the most appropriate method to handle the crown jewels and protect the crown jewels, and implement the approaches will ensure the comprehensive and balanced protection. That's a crown jewel. And then there are different types of attacks are there, threats are there. One is an interruption threat. When Bob and Alice are talking to each other, the Darth Vader bad guy will come into this communication and breaks the communication. So his intention is to disrupt the communication. This is what an interruption is all about. It's an interruption attack. Folks, with the minimum knowledge or understanding that you have as of now, as far as I understand, whatever the tools that you know as of now, is it possible to launch an interruption attack by you, where you're going to destruct the communication, or maybe trying to hit a particular server with a distress call? Is it possible? Can you do that? Do you know any such tool? which is a built-in tool in Windows, using which you can attack. There is a particular tool called ping. What is a ping used for? Any idea? P-I-N-G, ping. Yes, that's correct. Ping tool. So ping tool is used to check the connection with the ICMP protocol. So ping stands for Packet Internet Gopher. So how does this ping work in terms of launching an interruption attack? Do you see my Windows machine coming up, the virtual machine? So there is a website called altoromutual.com. Altoromutual.com. There's a website. It's a server banking website, which is actually a test site. So these are the options of a ping, out of which N stands for count, L stands for the size. So I'll try to use this. Folks, any one of you, just type ipconfig and let me know your IP address. Any one of you, or just type, because you must be using a dynamic IP address. So just you can also use something like this. What is my, or give me some random IP address of yours. Some random IP address. You need not to be a original one. You may change and give any one IP address. Now what I'm trying to do here is use a ping -s 10 148. Is that 68? And then I use a size of 5000 bytes, and I use a switch with count of 25. And then mutual.com. See original failure. So if you see here now, normal ping. I'm trying a normal ping right now. In this, you find the IP address, then you find the number of bytes is 32 bytes, and then you have a time. Then you have a time to live, right? Basing on which basically you can detect the operating system also based on the time to live. So that is there. And now what I'm going to do is I'll try to use this. Remove the source IP address option. Now what I do is I change this 32 into 1500. See, now bytes have increased to 1500. Now every time I send 1500 bytes packet. The other server now after 3 packets it is not responding back. It is identifying it's an huge packet. So I'm trying to interrupt the communication of others also by sending the heavy size packet to the target. Like this, keep on increasing the size. So this is a kind of attack called as an interrupt attack, and this is the type of attack that I have used. This is a type of threat. It's an interruption threat. The attack using this threat I have conducted. The attack is called as a ping by death. So we can send a continuous pings to a target where it will not reply back at all. You see here? I'm sending a 25,000 packet. It is not responding back. Request timed out. You see? So the threshold point is between 15,000 to 25,000, somewhere else in middle. So anyone who sends a packet more than 25,000, the server will not respond. So knowing this as a weakness, I'll try to flood this request with this number of packets back at the target. Is that clear? Do you understand how I'll interrupt? For example, let's say this is the Altoro server. This is an Altoro server, and this is me, attacker, sorry, a legitimate user, and this is me, attacker. What I will do is, first of all, I'll try to disconnect this communication. Is the first thing what I would do. But this I'll launch an attack. Using this particular attack, the server will go down and it will not be available for this victim at all. So he'll not be able to access to that server anymore. So this kind of an attack is called an interruption attack. So for this purpose, I've launched using a ping tool. I've launched an attack on the target. It's called as a ping by death command. Then you have something called an interception attack, which is a man in the middle attack. Man in the middle attack is nothing but two people are talking to each other, or two systems are talking to each other. Someone in middle would actually sniff to the communication. Will try to capture this communication. This kind of a threat, which could lead to an attack called as a man in the middle attack, interception threat. So you two people are talking to each other, and I'll be intercepting the communication, and I will be intercepting the discussion that is happening between these two. This is what will lead to a man in the middle. So I am the man in the middle who would actually, between your web application and the user, would be trying to do. And in a similar way, between your control system and the user, I'll be trying to So this kind of an attack is called as a man-in-the-middle attack. And earlier one I've shown is a ping by death. So where other DOS attack is also one of the example for interruption. So DDoS attack, various different types of attacks. Then comes a last threat, that is after interruption and interception threats, that is a modification threat. This is where the unauthorized party will gain access to the tamper, but to tamper the asset is not going to protect the asset. So modification is nothing but unauthorized access to system and modifying the properties, modifying the basic properties of the system, not allow anybody to log in. Is what modifications are. There are classic types of classification of attacks that you see. The types of attacks starts with cyberbullying and abuse, identity theft, financial fraud and privacy, corporate espionage, vandalism. What's a vandalism, folks? Vandalism is nothing but destruction of assets, destruction, breaking something. Yes, it's a vandalism. It could be the malicious domains, could be the malware, could be the ransomware, it could be the phishing. So all put together are different types of attacks that can happen. So it remains to be same, but I think more or less the methodologies would be different and the attack names would be different, but the approach or attacking approach methodology would remains to be same. The types of attacks that we see is the system hacking, malware and malvertising, phishing attack, brute forcing attack, salami attack, and MITM attack, denial of service attack, rogue software driven by download, and spoofing attack. Got this. System hacking is taking control over any of the systems. So attacking a mobile phone, attacking a laptop, and trying to take control. And hackers have got a special lingo that they use. They write, for example, if you own a system, you write as an you own a system, right? This is how you write. Hacker writes this as a PWM, own a system. This is a normal way. System hacking is nothing but owning a system. In malware, different types of malwares you have, starting from malware like virus, worms. What are all other malwares have you heard about? Apart from virus and worm, malvertising is nothing but a simple way you can say that antonym of advertising. Advertising is on a positive notion by taking a solicitation from the concerned people, then you start launching advertising. But malvertising is nothing but take control across and propagating ads which is against the interest of the people. Malvertising. Phishing is more of like luring someone, keeping something as a bait, so that they'll get connected and they'll easily get into the trap. And then we have a brute forcing, which is a password-based attack. This attack would based on the rainbow tables, based on the different types of, for example, with your name, with your if I start working on you, if I target a particular, let's say a particular plant I have targeted, all I have to know is what are all the default user IDs and passwords that your Coco equipment will be using. And also, I need to know if there is it's a personalized or personal systems which I need to attack on within the organization. Then we'll be looking at how we can execute and take the control over the system by using a brute forcing method, like identifying the user's first name, user's last name, combination of the passwords that they are using, and how they are storing that password or memorizing that password. Using that, basically, a brute force attack would be success is depended upon. Then the salami attack. Salami attack is something which I suggest you to for the readouts for tomorrow. I want you to tell me what is the salami attack is all about and what's an importance that it has gained. Man in the middle attack already we discussed. Then we have something called a denial of services attack. Denial of service attack is nothing but there is an asset. Let's say this asset is your industrial control system or some kind of an equipment, or maybe your website, right? Maybe some kind of a server that is there. So there are various legitimate users that are connected to this particular servers, right? Legitimate users are connected to this service. Now, attacker will attack by using a ping to death command. Will try to attack, keep on attacking on this particular server. So this kind of an attack would make the server will go down. For example, how you have seen a request timed out. When I'm trying to use the ping command, it is giving a request timed out. That's a way how the exploitation can happen, and this is where the availability of the resource will go down for the legitimate users. So you see here, even now you haven't received the reply. The only reason why you haven't received reply is because of the packet that you have used. So it is not available for a legitimate person now. Now, once again, I try with the same size. Do you understand the concept, guys? So this is nothing but denial of service. altoromutual.com, this website, is denying service to open to anybody else, because when I start running this command, and think of a situation, if I'm an individual, I'm running this and it is giving me a request timed out for every alternative. What if I send a request with a heavy packet size, and that too within a short time, from multiple sources? If I send, what would the situation? So the server will completely go down, and there could be possibly crash also that might occur. Then you have a rogue software. Rogue software is nothing but a free software, then driven by downloads and the spoofing attack. So it initially started with social engineering on a week one, and this was not taken as a serious thing. And now this was on a, let's say, 01, on a day 01. And 02, you started seeing, or 02 and 04, to 04, you started seeing a lot of probes where the TCP, specific TCP flags. What is TCP? We'll talk about it as we move on to the next module, right? So there's TCP flags. A lot of TCP flags scan specific type of TCP flag scans are being identified, and then we see that between 7th to 10th, we see that in an enterprise network. So we see two types of events between 7th to 10th. In the enterprise network, we see that there is an probing attempt. Some kind of a backdoor has been found at some point in some computer. Say one of the laptop of the employee, and a backdoor has been identified, which is a probing attempt. So you are able to identify some kind of a weapon is being used against you. I'll tell you, there is a connectivity between all these points as we move forward and talk about, at some point in time, we talk about the MITRE framework and attack framework. So at that point in time, I'll connect you these dots back over there. MITRE and attack is a very popular framework in terms of running your threat intelligence and threat hunting. So then you started finding an HMI server or HMI system, you started finding some kind of an unknown files at that point in time, right? So this is how smaller things put together. Finally, at one point in time, on a 15th, you have identified that you've undergone the data exfiltration. You have undergone exfil. So this is what you see, that this is an ultimate damage that has happened. Your data has been got exfiltrated. It has been stolen. So somebody have now breached your network and stolen this data. So from first day 1 to day 15, there are several events that have taken place. If you see here, all these events put together has led to one big impact over here. This has created the damage. So this is what basically a salami attack would do. Small things put together would create a larger damage. And if you would have realized at this point in time, right? So here this was happened, here this was happened, here this was happened. Now you would be prepared. So at every point in time, the most important thing is that the SOC teams and SIM teams have their own job to do. So every day it's tons of data that they have to churn, and a lot of false positives they come across in a day, and you cannot find them as a reason not getting detected, because end of the day, between a true positive and false positive, it's a big fight. That's where, in fact, very existence of the cybersecurity professionals rely upon, because to whatever extent that our technology might go in terms of automation in future, but somebody who's into cybersecurity, the core practice of cybersecurity, or who has a skill set of cybersecurity along with their regular area of expertise, would be the very or a high value resource for the organizations, and this will be the future for sure. So having said that, now identifying between these two is a very big challenge, and this cannot be automated at any point in time, because it's only manual. With the manual intervention you can identify this, though your machine learning, artificial intelligence, whatever comes in, and if this is what it happens. So to identify this itself is a very big problem, and so between this, they might just in between your fingers just move on like a slipping sand. So that's how the salami attacks usually used to take place. And now most of NGN, the next generation firewalls you have, all of this has got that ability, but most of the times this got subsided, but still we have sheer chance of exploitation. And one more important term I would like to introduce you as I discuss this for on this particular area. So between day 1 and day 4, there is a particular duration, or there is a time, right? So there is a specific time it took to get identified, the incident of identifying this particular incident. This particular time is called as an time period, or a timeline is called as an dwell time. So we'll talk about it a little later as the discussion has come. I thought of introducing you to this term called dwell time. So this is very important in terms of whenever you're doing a risk assessment. So what is your capacity in terms of, if the incident takes place, within what time would you be able to detect it, based on which your risk rating will also is dependent on. That's a broader area. So why are we losing the pace, holding the fort and losing the forts at most of the times, or undergoing the attacks? What could be the reason? Because today, if you look at it, organizations are spending enough money. Earlier, as I told you at the starting point of this particular session, cybersecurity was treated initially like a star on a shoulder or a feather on a cap. So you have different degrees, or different certifications, or different standards that you have met, and it's one of another certification, cybersecurity, so that you can give, okay, we are completely CM level certified. Along with that, we are compliance certified, we are SOX certified, we are HIPAA certified, we are PCI DSS certified, we are IEC 62443 compliance complete with the 62443. So this kind of one of the another star on the shoulder, or feather on the cap. But the point is that why they used to treat cybersecurity in a backseat for the most of the days is because they treated this as a necessary evil. Why they call it as a necessary evil? So this is a necessary evil because the kind of they want cybersecurity to be implemented, and the cost. So the cost that they have to invest to implement the cybersecurity infrastructure is one reason. Second would be lack of resources, or maybe lack of technical knowledge. And then third would be lack of availability of resources. Resources are not available. So now organizations, from a necessary evil stage to they have come to an extent understanding that this is no more a necessary evil, but this is a need of the hour. This is a need of the hour. But the point is that they don't have readily available resource. Now the people who has the knowledge of cybersecurity is not leaving the organizations, and organization is not ready to leave them. So most of the times, that's the reason why, as I said earlier, in cybersecurity, the attrition rate is almost zero. Either there could be because of a disciplinary action, or either it could be because of some kind of an dropout, like they wanted to voluntarily resign and move on to the next level of the career, or some kind of a reason for it, but not because that organization no more need them, or they have an adequate resources, because it's between demand and supply. It is almost for last 2 quarters, it is 128% is what the shortfall, and especially in the cybersecurity resources. Then the other reasons why we are losing the cyber arena is because the resources availability is less. Security analysts are turned out to be a lone rangers, and the attackers are in millions. You have seen yesterday in one of the threat maps. So when you see this threat map, you see the attacks that are happening. So at one point in time, like a flood, it just keep on coming like waves. So this kind of attacks, to handle this kind of attacks, so the kind of, because this is all bots, most of the times these attacks takes place by the bots, and they are millions. And these are countable numbers who apply this thought. Like, all you have to do is create a new type of a malware, create a new type of an attack technique, and write a code, and then you connect that to a bot network, or a robotic network, right, which will automate the entire process, and that's it. You should. So the attack would keep on going. So that's how it works with whenever there's an attack that takes place. This is where the challenge comes in. Now we talk about the industrial control system. What kind of an operation design vulnerabilities that we have. So ICS are why the industrial control systems are being targeted. So as we all know, ICS environments are comprised of largely component and custom operating system, customized network protocols. The tools to address the cybersecurity issues very hard to find. Cybersecurity, especially ICS. The approach what you take, to know for IT security and the OT security is not same. We are going to, of course, explicitly discuss about the difference between these two, but both of them are not same, especially in those areas of architecture to the field input and output devices. It becomes really, it differs from completely from the approach that we take for IT security, the OT security. Why hackers are core focused on industrial control systems today is because they are the high value targets. So what kind of a high value? Instead of now working around, okay, I have a question to you. It is a quite generic question, right? So which I would like to learn from you, your thoughts on that particular question that comes up. Let's say a hacker.
Just a quick info, guys. Test your knowledge of cybersecurity by answering this question. What is code red? A. An antivirus program. B. A photo editing software. C. A computer virus. D. A video editing software. Comment your answer in the comment section below. Subscribe to Intellipaat to know the right answer. Now, let's continue with the session. Just a quick info, guys. If you want to make a career in cybersecurity, then Intellipaat has a post-graduation certification in cybersecurity and ethical hacking by ENICT Academy, MNIT Jaipur. This course is of very high quality and cost-effective, as it is taught by MNIT professors and industry experts.
Or attacker has taken over an X account, and from that X account, he has taken over, let's say, $10,000, right? So the question is, from this $10,000, how much percentage do you think it will go into the pocket of the attacker? The percentage could be a guess. How much percentage do you think? Let's assume that a hacker has taken over an account, a bank account, from which he has stolen or siphoned $10,000, right? Now the question is, how much percentage do you think it will go or get into the pockets of hacker? There is a reason behind this question, so I would like to hear your thought process. How much do you assume that will come to his pocket? If it is 100%, this question will not come up at all. 95%, 90%, 10%, 50%, more than 100%. How does it happen now, Mayank? When it is in $10,000, more than $10,000, how can? So now the point is, all they get is just 10 to 15%. Why? So the reason is, as I just try this. So the reason is very simple. So it goes with, let's say, 10,000 is what he has stolen. From here, you do not want to get caught. Nobody wants to get caught, right? Always they want to commit the crime conveniently and skip or cover their tracks, not to get caught. For this purpose, like $10,000 or $20,000, they will siphon from different accounts, right? Everything comes and sits in a particular account called as a pooling account. From this pooling account, it will go to a conduit account. So this could be like in conjunction with the bankers, some kind of a rogue bank employee. So what they do is, with the people who are non-existent people, they are not existent at all. For example, they'll take eyes of yours from your photograph And there's from some other photo they'll take the other part of the face, and from other they'll take other part of the face, and they create a new image, and they create a fake SSN ID or a fake IC number or fake Aadhaar number, and then what they do is they create an KYC document for this, which is know your customer document or proof of your identification and address, POI, proof of identification and proof of address, which is also called as an PII, which is called as an personally identifiable information. This KYC is also called as an PII, which is personally identifiable information, PII. So they create a fake PII, or they create for the dead people, right, who are non-existent. So for on their names, people who are already dead, so on their name they create a fake identification, and some with some broke bank employee, so they open this bank account. So this pooling account is also one of such accounts. Like they open it on a place where they quickly every weekly once they use this account, they'll condemn this account. They don't further use this. They open a new account. They get a new account for which there is a cost. So, and more importantly, they are not going to organize this or manage this pooling account. Some third party would be doing this. So this $10,000 he will be transferring. He will be hacking you the account, and he'll be transferring the $10,000, and he'll be sent to this pooling account. From there, there will be different conduit accounts, not just one conduit account, but different conduit accounts that they use. So for each one of these account, again there will be a cost. Again from there, they use a money transfer mechanism. Could be some kind of a wallet or a cryptocurrency wallets. These days that's a new thing, but earlier it was a Western Union or some other kind of modes that they use, money transfer modes, and for which this wallet cost would be there from each one of these accounts. So it will again go to some kind of a wallet, and from there finally there will be a money laundering agent would be there. To his account from this wallet, it will go to that money laundering agent, and from there it finally comes to this bad guy, hacker, right? So this is how. So in this, if you see, at some point in time, he might be feeling, see, I'm stealing $10,000. What am I getting? It's just the 1,000 or $1,500, right? So $1,500 or $1,000. So it's not worthy. So for this, he wants something which would pay him a ransom in one shot, a high value target. So he has seen this. After this, what he has done is the next wave, this kind of small money is not really lucrative for him. Then he started targeting cryptocurrencies or your minor nodes, like making your computer. And have you ever heard about something called a crypto miner? Anyone? Crypto miner is a tiny software which goes and infects your browser or any of your computer. So then what it will do is it will now exploit this crypto miner would exploit the computer hardware resources once it takes the browser. Once it takes the browser, from browser it will exploit your hardware resources. So that's another option that they have chosen. But here, all they get is few cents per day, which is not really lucrative for them again. So that's the reason why they choose now the targets as industrial control systems. For example, this can be either used as I hijack entire one plant industrial control system or a OT, entire OT technology that is being used in the plant, and I send a demand to the owners or the management team that if you pay a $10 million or a $1 million or $2 million, I'm going to leave your plant. Elsewhere, I'm going to exploit your plant. I'm going to release this information outside. So this kind of a threats they give. That's how. For this, they have to understand the importance of it. So what's an evolution that has been historically identified on industrial control systems is which dates back almost this industrial using the automation or automated methods in the industrial area. Many of the plants dates almost back to 2000 years. The earliest record of the industrial system as control system is the water clock that kept time, regulating the vessel water level flow in ancient Greek time and Egyptian time. It was done by Ctesibius, who was an inventor for this. So that's where the industrial control system first ever has identified in the historical records. Then you have automatic control. It's evolved a lot of years, a lot over the years. Industrial relay system on an array of control systems. So industrial plants that rely on the array of control systems. Like it starts with the DCS, distributed control systems, or manufacturing execution systems, SCADA and PLC, or what name things that we hear, areas of technology. So PLC can perform. PLC is one of the technology that's being used as a part of the industrial control systems, which are with the built-in modules like power supply, CPU, IOs, the communication modules that are there. Modular PLC is a compact, fixed with a limited input-output functions, and which extends with the input-output based features. So the input module relates to the sensor or actuators. Actuators or could be the other output devices get connected to. Then you have a SCADA, which is quite popular, right? So from the ages they have been using this, which has been set across like the combination of PLC with the data plane, control plane, and then the human interface together is what brought the SCADA control. So those the endpoint devices are being connected to the PLCs, and PLC to an HMI device, everything would be the control of the SCADA. So instead of why the SCADA has evolved is instead of giving a root control access or a super user access to any of one user, so they provide a supervision access to level of the management that you need to do on those systems. And this is such as pipelines or water treatment plants, electrical or transmission, railways, all of this majorly depended on technology like SCADA. The first DCS units are appeared in the industrial market in the mid of 1970s, primarily focused on building a plant-sized distributed mechanism, dividing them into different layers. The systems are used to control the productions in one location. They are the easiest way. So one particular device from which you can set as a point to connect to the actuator instructing valves. So where this whatever the data that is being collected be used for the future references and used for the advanced control strategies. As a supervisory control loop is used by each one of the DCS to manage multiple local devices and controllers. DCS also can eliminate the ability of distributed. That's the same thing that works fairly even in the computing as well. So any of the distributing or a distributed system can evade the SPOF. What is SPOF? Anyone from the session? Have you ever heard about SPOF? Term SPOF. It's a single point of failure. So broadly, if you look into the Purdue model, right, so industrial control system architecture, we talk about it. It consists of control center processing local area network. Then you have the LAN that is defined only for the human-machine interface systems. Then the controllers, controller LAN or a field input-output devices together is what it comprised of the overall industrial system architecture. Broadly, it starts with the processing local area network, control center processing local area network, and the local HMI controller LAN field IO devices. So when you look at it, you see broadly the Purdue model is more focused from level 0 to the level 2 of the on-site layers of or levels in the Purdue model. So we'll talk about Purdue model once we move to the next slides and next module. So what is Purdue model and how it got evolved and what kind of a conjunction or connectivity that it has with the 62443 standard. So we'll talk about it as we move on. So on the level 0, you find that there are the edge devices, which are also called as field devices. Then the controller LAN. So the controllers are being set, and these controllers are being connected to the field devices using a specific type of a network. It could be a wireless LAN, it could be a wired LAN. It depends upon the on-site deployment. So if the same thing when you talk about deploying IoT devices, areas would use different protocols apart from just 802.11. So it could be 802.15, it could be 802 11N, could be a wireless LAN, could be a Zigbee, it could be LoRaWAN, different type of protocols that you could use. Then you have an operations and management zone, which is to this level 2. This is where the network segmentation takes place between the plant. So where you consist of various important servers, the computing infrastructure starts with an HMI, then the production server, application server, and then the better database, then the controllers transaction server, which is an input-output server, we call it. Could be a data historian, domain controller, the engineering station. So can we say something like this? Authentication is what you are, and authorization is who you are. Are you a supervisor? Are you a root access? Are you an admin access? What kind of an, are you a normal user access that you have? What you are. So you have to have, like, this is what I am. I'm Vinod, and this is Vinod 123 is my password, and I work with the on-field team, and this is what my role is all about, which has been tagged with these details with technologies like a domain controller or using an LDAP kind of a protocols. So in a Windows environment, they use a domain controller, which Kerberos, along with the Kerberos, they use a domain controller, and this is being handled by a specific application. The Windows calls an ADS. An idea what is ADS? Active Directory Services. In Windows, in Linux-based systems, which is basically the LDAP, LDAP. Then comes the engineering workstations along with that. Then at the level 3, we find that the patch management software, historian. What's an historian server? What is this used for? Historian. The historian uses control system data, so which maintains the data. To it, and then you have a level 4, which is domain controller web services, which is this is where right from here the enterprise network will start. This is where it is connected to the internet. But one common thing that you see is they are all connected on the same plane. Same plane they use, they are connected with each other. So this 30 model would explain you what would be the deployment models that you could choose. What are the top vulnerabilities that we find? Top 10 vulnerabilities as per the NERC US, NERC organization in US. Top 10 vulnerabilities is inadequate policies, inadequate procedures, and the culture to govern the control system. The most challenge that most of the time, the challenges that you see is clash between an operational culture and the modern IT security methods. Lack of overall awareness and appreciation of the risk associated with enabling the network devices, these customized control systems. Absence of control system information security policy. There's no, because what we do is across the organization, usually why 6244 is gaining a lot of traction these days is that you have everything covered in that. It's like a holy book of information security. Right? So using the 6244 standards, like can evolve a security policy, but usually till now the organizations before this, people started understanding the importance of 6244, 62443, they were following just the ISMS policy. Any idea what is an ISMS? Have you heard about it earlier? Information Security Management System is they create a policy based on this, based on which they define what is an fair use policy, what is an end use policy, what are all the do's and don'ts, how are business systems to be used, all of that. And the same was applied for the industrial systems, which is not actually lack of auditing, enforcing, and adhering to the control system information security, not adhered to enforce or audited. The system control systems are, you'll still find along with the modern systems there are certain legacy systems or conventional mode of technologies still being used in most of the plants and by the organizations along with the modern ones. That's one of the disastrous approach, could be one of the disastrous approach that it could take, where the exploitation can take place because of a legacy based system on the overall advanced infrastructure as well. And this kind of loopholes are not being audited or assessed properly from time to time. Next is that the lack of adequate risk assessment. So we don't understand what kind of a risk do we have. The mitigation strategies could be: one is the foundational level. Assign a senior manager for overall responsibility for the foundational level to implement and identify, manage the entity's implementation and adherence to robust control system security practices. Document and implement the cybersecurity policy that represents overall security. Develop the security procedures, implementation guidance to enable the employees implement the specific elements of cybersecurity policy. So there should be a clear defined cybersecurity policy for the control systems, and that has to be that should be adaptable, and this policy should guide the resources to follow the security procedures. Develop the risk management plan that identifies documents risk-based assessment. So we'll talk about what is a risk-based assessment methodology, what's a threat-based assessment methodology, what is a vulnerability-based assessment method, how to take an agnostic stand basing on this. So identify the critical assets. This is where I explained you yesterday the crown jewels. So the mission critical elements out of the overall available assets right in front of you, which one is you have to prioritize, like the mission critical elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the second level priority, third level priority. So you have to define accordingly. There should be a periodical review and update as necessary. It's very important to provide an adequate employee training based on the task and ensure the policies and procedures that are comprehensively include the other parts of enterprise vendors and contractors. And most importantly, there should be a synchronization between the information technology and the control systems, where they could share the knowledge. They could now understand what kind of possible exploitations that could undergo. So basing on which, okay, this is a port that I'm opening on the firewall, and do we have the same kind of a service that is running at the endpoint? If yes, how do I filter the open port? How do I now put a restriction on the open port instead of opening the port completely? How would I do this? How to share the industry best practices, security policy structure, topics with it, develop the implementation process and with the continuous improvement and enforcement. So these are the guidelines that are suggested by NERC. This and also providing the periodic hands-on cybersecurity training related to the control systems. So the hands-on should actually have more deeper understanding on the industrial system, and could be by consulting firm or whatever it could be. And then it's also important, like how you run and fire drill within the organization. This is where the MITRE and attack frameworks will actually be a great help. MITRE and attack framework. So it's called as an ATT and CK or MITRE and attack framework. That's how it works. So the industrial control systems, there's a particular teams that have been set for each one of the organization related to industrial control system emergency, cyber emergency response team. According to the US CERT, this is one of the stipulated norms that they have suggested. So what is the role of ICS CERT, Industrial Control System CERT? Do you know what's a CERT before I move forward? Folks, have you ever heard about this word CERT earlier, anywhere? Let me explain it to you, a little background before I go there. All right. So we have UNO, right? United Nations Organization, so which is like a consortium of all the countries put together. They have United Nations Organization, under which they have come up with a framework called as CERT. It could be broadly we call it as a computer emergency response team, right? Computer emergency response team. So under this UN CERT, under this UN, because there's an UNO, I said. So under this UN CERT, there are several regional CERTs will be there. Several regional CERTs will be there. These regional CERTs are nothing but the regional computer emergency response teams. Computer emergency response teams. So every country, Singapore has their own CERT. India has their own CERT. Everybody have their own CERT. US has US CERT. Why US CERT has gained more popularity is because they have been actively working. They have foreseen this cyber attacks much before than others, and they have been, which is to be accepted that they've been a little ahead of it in terms, because that's where the NIST framework. Have anybody heard about NIST framework, folks? NIST cybersecurity I would suggest you to please download and read about NIST 800. This is a cybersecurity framework. So yeah, US CERT has been actively. There's a lot of activity that was happening for last decade, more than decade. Very active work was happening over there. Let me just show you this US CERT and other certs. Do you see my browser now, or should I reshare? So you see here, there are a lot of work that keep happening on the US CERT. You can report an incident here, right? You can get reports related to. It need not be just a US organization, but anywhere else across the world would be reported here. But basically, effectively, it works within the territory, and it's this kind of platforms are called as an CTIs. This is called as an crowd threat intelligence, and then you see the kind of the informative side they have put across. And when you go to the resources, you'll find a lot of advisories for each one of this, for a mid-sized business, academic business, industrial business, and the framework. They'll talk about the NIST framework, right? So there'll be a lot of information that will be given here. For example, you see here industrial control systems, the advisories and reports. Advisories is nothing but the recent, whatever you see here, the recent activities that have taken place, exploitations that have taken place. So there is one advisory, a recent ICS advisory, Yokogawa, Centum, and etc. So I'll explain you what is the CBSS as we move forward. So this advisory would talk about like the exploit, this using an exploit, remote exploit. So the exploit is nothing but we discussed about yesterday. We have discussed about vulnerability and a threat and the risk. Vulnerability is a weakness. So your weakness is being exploited by a vector, a threat vector. So could be, as I've given an example of low immunity is there. The people with the low immunity now maybe not taking the precautions of social distancing and not wearing the mask would prone to the COVID-19. So that's a vector through which, like by hand touch, whatever it could be, and it could be exploited. The weakness can be exploited. So this is what an exploit is all about, right? And which could lead to a bigger size of damage level that is called as an risk, which would actually there are different types of risks that we have, and one of those risks is a residual risk. So we'll talk about it a little later. So now, remotely, whatever the exploitability that it can undergo, how the exploit. So exploitability is nothing but weakness which has been taken as an advantage. So using that exploit is used on that particular system. And for this, you don't need to be an expert hacker. You see this to exploit this vulnerability, weakness. You don't need to be an expert attacker at all. You can be a low level knowledge, the basic level knowledge. Right after this, you can actually try this kind of exploit on the system. Right after this training program, you can go with this. So you see here, the vendor is Yokogawa, and this is the equipment that it goes in Centum and OPC, and then use in hard-coded credentials, relative path traversal, improper output neutralization of logs, command injection attack is possible, permission privileges. So this kind of information is available here. And this was released in 2022, March 24th, 2022. So this kind of information is available over here, and similar to that, we have resources here in Singapore CERT. This is in Singapore Computer Emergency Response Team. And you have the advisories again here. So the advisories, you see the updates, the level of updates, what it has on US CERT, and the level of updates what we have on other websites, even the other websites also comes little bit later. So that's the reason why most of the cybersecurity experts rely upon the US CERT. So checklist organization, password checker. So whenever an incident takes place, what kind of an process you should follow. There's an incident handler response checklist. And then come to Indian CERT. Advisories, find the advisories or not, find. Different types of advisories are there. Yeah. So each one of them is a different advisories. So they'll define you what would be an appropriate method to go with. They'll also give you security audit baselines, the security baselines, which are really important resources that are required by the organizations. How to prevent the data breaches, and then malicious you see sources, incident analysis, technical notes, the Malaysia CERT. So the CERT stands for Computer Emergency Response Team. So under the CERT, so usually what happens is whenever there is an incident takes place, you can report that incident here within your organization. So that's how they come to know. You have a lot of white papers, a lot of resources. It's quite resourceful, each one of those. So whenever you think that like there is a situation that has arisen related to computer emergency in a particular country, you can get more detailed information about that particular incident from that CERT, a regional CERT. So do you understand what is a CERT now? Any questions? Let's say as a central CERT, UN CERT is there, right? Now from this UN CERT, I said there are different countries wise regional CERTs have come in, right? So that's what I told you. So these are all the regional CERTs. Our CERT. Regional CERT like Singapore, India, US, right? So whatever. So under this, each one of these regional CERTs, right? Each one of these regional CERTs, after the CERT, the next body would be CSIRT. So your incident response team is a member, would be a member of the regional CERT within your Yokogawa, within your organization. So like this, Philips, like this, you talk about every organization, they become a member of the CERT. So these are the people who will actually coordinate with the CERT team. Hey, I have this problem and there's a vulnerability that has been cited, and or there's an attacker has come in, which I don't want to reveal my name, but I just wanted to publicize this information so that my peers will not get affected like me. Or maybe, hey, look, I have found this vulnerability. I haven't undergone the attack, but I don't want to reveal that this is a vulnerability which I have cited. But I want this information to be publicly known so that the other people will not get affected because of this vulnerability. The other people can patch this vulnerability. So this kind of an attitude of the organizations or the approach of the organizations, so make the regional CERT strong. Most of the organizations today, whenever there's an incident takes place, they are getting into they're getting into a shell. So in a groove model, they don't want to disclose that information because that will hit on the reputation of the organization, and that one incident should be enough to bring down the reputation which they have built for the ages, is what they're worried about. That one incident is enough to bring their share value in the stock market to half of it within hours. So that's what they are worried about, and because of this, basically, there is a possibility that they don't reveal. But using the CERTs, regional CERTs, anonymize themselves and reveal this information. For example, if that is the case, why the Yokogawa Centum and XOPC, the information has been shown. You have, at that point in time, the Centum is a kind of a product that would have been there with hundreds of clients or thousands of clients across the world. So they have to know that this particular product has undergone the vulnerability. There is no mistake of the organization related to that. It's all got to do with, it's over a period of time, there is a new vulnerability that evolves. As I always say, folks, when there is a forward engineering, there is a reverse engineering that will be keep coming in. So as rightly said by Steve Jobs, it's always easy to connect the dots in reverse way. So it takes time to invent that product, but once you've created the product, it makes my life easier to do a reverse engineering and identify what are all the possible exploitations that I can do on a particular product. So ICS CERT advisories, industrial control system advisories that I've shown you some time back in US. So those advisories are increased close to about 30% in 2019. The number of CVEs. What is a CVE? Now it's a time for me to introduce you to a term called as an CVE. CVE stands for common vulnerabilities and exposures. Common vulnerabilities and exposures is what we call it as an CVE. So whenever an exploitation or a new vulnerability comes in, a CVE will be generated, and this is basically a CVE practicing started by US. There is something called as a MITRE organization, which is controlled by the NIST. So that basically gives you an input about what are all the common known vulnerabilities. That is nothing but, for example, you have an X system with you. In that X system, there could be some vulnerability, which might have been, some part of the world, in some corner of the world, some hacker would have exploited it. So you don't know about it. But without knowing, you're implementing the same product, same kind of an infrastructure you are using, and you're not upgrading that, or you're not patching it up. Security patch is not being installed. Because of this, basically, you might also undergo the attack. That's the reason why they maintain a particular centralized database called as CVE MITRE database. CVE MITRE database. So in here, you can go and check. Like, for example, I go with Yokogawa Center. Let's say. So these are all the known vulnerabilities that are there, vulnerabilities and exposures. Like following is a electric product, hardcoded password for the CAMS server. So send them VP versions from 5.01 to 5.04 to the 6.01 and 6.8, and exa OPC versions 3.72 and 3.79. So all these versions can get affected because of this vulnerability. So what is this vulnerability? Let's read about it. I open the link here. This is, if you see, the report itself is generated by Yokogawa Security team, right? The vulnerabilities have been found in the sentiment XOPC. Yokogawa has identified the range of affected products in this report, and this is the details of that product. So this is a known vulnerability. So whenever you suggest something to the customer, or whenever you wanted to, let's say you are from an engineering background, you are going to deploy an infrastructure or design a network architecture for industrial control system, you have to now take consideration of what are all the known vulnerabilities that are there in terms of my product, in terms of the overall network protocols. So protocols also have a problem. I'll show you that. So I'm going to use a Modbus. Modbus in this particular version, in this particular TCP based or RTP based Modbus, what kind of an possible exploitation that it can go undergo. So the vulnerabilities you have to know, and you have to check before you start whether this is applicable, this vulnerability is there or not. If it is there, you have to stop, you have to apply the patch, security patch for that vulnerability, and you have to remediate, and you have to give the proper solution, then only you have to implement. So these are all the vulnerabilities that you have to take into consideration while you deploy something. In a similar way, like let me just show you Modbus protocol. You see that Modbus protocol, there are a lot of issues that are there. So there's an improper, unusual, exceptional conditions, vulnerability is existing. And that, because of which disruption of communication between the ModCon controller and the engineering software might take place when an attacker is able to intercept. I'll show you how to intercept. As a particular point in time, we'll be intercepting data. Modbus response, and the products that are affected is an exostructure process expert, exostructure control. So let's see what is that. It's an ECS tool which is used for the cement industry. Yes. So these are the tools. Now let me introduce you to. Then this is an exostructure. So this is how your research should go on. Whenever you want to design a proper network architecture, first and foremost thing, you have to have a checklist. Now, what is a known vulnerability? What is a known exploitation, weakness that is there? What kind of a possibility is there where the exploit might take advantage? So, in last 1 year, we see that 248 ICS advisories are being released by the US CERT, and 710 CVEs are being identified, and the risk rating is 8.0, which is a very high increased risk rating. Out of 10, it's 8 is what risk rating. These advisors are equally split up between the original equipment manufacturer and the application software and the embedded devices vulnerability. So that's how the advisories are equally being. So not only just the equipment, but also all effect it has taken. So 2020 vulnerabilities, these vulnerabilities create a risk as networks are increasingly connected. Almost 2/3% are exploited remotely. A little skill required over here. You don't need to be, as you have seen low skill hacker can also take control. That's the reason why the hackers are more inclined towards ICS and OT infrastructure these days, because all you need to know is a little knowledge about the ICS systems, and a better knowledge on the protocols, and an excellent knowledge on the tools. So that's any average hacker will have. So that's not what makes you an advanced hacker is having this all three. Along with that, you need to have an advanced thought process, logical thought process with a creative mindset. Logical thought process with a creative mindset. So I always say that hacking is a combination of right and left brains. That means right lobe would talk and left lobe would talk about one. So creative one side and logic one side combined put together is what a hacking would be effectively work. So the total number of remotely exploitable and low skill vulnerabilities are increased to 66%. This is a bothering one, and this trend started from 2020 versus 2019. They should raise the hair when accessing operation technology operators everywhere, especially across the world. See here, there's a huge jump. Any idea what is Advantech? These are the stats of ICS cert, the organization called ICS cert. Please remember this and do not let the session close without asking this particular thing when we talk about risk assessment. There will be a point because I want to spend enough time on that CVSS scoring so that everyone in this session should have that knowledge. So quickly, when you present it to a customer, when you present it to your internal thing, whether you're doing assessment for yourself, so for everything, the CVSS score would actually add value. We'll talk about it when it comes. Topic comes about risk assessment. Please do not forget because that will be appropriate to discuss there. CVDetails.com is one of the website which will show these vulnerabilities along with the CVE MITRE framework. So earlier I've shown you CVE MITRE framework. Then similar to CVE details, the same thing they extract from CVMITRE.com and they keep it in a user-friendly way. CVE details. It's the same thing you get here, but you get more graphical now along with the CVSS score. So CVSS scoring, Common Vulnerability Scoring System. CVSS stands for Common Vulnerability Scoring System. So there is a method for CVSS which I'll take more in detailed session on it. So this is called as an CVSS calculator, vulnerability scoring system. I'll explain each one of this terminology in your own adaptable language, and so that you can also generate a CVSS. We'll do that exercise at some point in time. So these are a couple of ICS reports of 2020, and so the overall thing is that when percentage wise, it's almost 100% growth in terms of the vulnerabilities that have been identified comparing to last 2 years when we take and 2020 as a benchmark. So the exploit levels of availability, low level exploit to exploit, low skill level exploit from 56% has raised to 63%. Remote low level skills and low skill level exploits that are you see is from 25 it has dipped to 19%. And exploitation remotely, so that means without communicating or interfacing. If you see the overall exploitability, remote exploitabilities, that's grown by at least by 5 to 10%. And taking an average of 8 is what our overall remote exploitation. The top vulnerabilities that we have seen in 2020 is authentication validation is around 35%, and then buffer overflow is 30%. Sensitive information risk is 25%. Path traversal, cross-site scripting is 15%, and memory buffers, which is a buffer overflow is 10%. Vulnerabilities published in ICS cert increased by 44% in the first half of the 2020. It has been increasingly high. So these are the top industries like critical manufacturing and multiple other industries and energy sectors are the top 3 sectors which are undergoing attacks for quite some time. So comparative with the 2020-2021, that's a Nozoki Networks research report, IoT security related report that they have identified, the OT and IT. CERT also identifies that process level exploitations are also increasingly high, where it poses a challenge to the industry. And these segments are struggling to gain the momentum. So you see that there are outbound right related CWE. So now let me introduce you to what is a CWE. See here is a common weakness enumeration. So you have an hardware, you have a target system right in front of you. To what extent this target can be exploited is what you can find by common weakness enumeration. So this was a common vulnerability exposure. This was a common vulnerability exposure, vulnerabilities and exposures. This is a common weakness enumeration. So here you can find latest versions, also get the visualization reports for each one of the software-based view by the hardware design. So you can go with the manufacturing and life cycle management concerns. So then go with the semiconductors or the overall devices. You'll get the information related to what all recent exploitations that are there, enumerations that are there. The current year is 924 weaknesses that are identified at a chip level, as well as integration level, so privilege separation, so different enumerations. So need not to be essentially or explicitly stated as an OT, but it could be like the same component, same type of component at least might be used in some part of the OT. So that then the same kind of the vulnerability could be used to enumerate. What's the meaning of enumeration? According to you, how do you put that in your own words? Enumeration. Enumeration is nothing but you have identified a vulnerability, and now you wanted to test whether that vulnerability is there or not. So using the enumeration process, you can test the vulnerabilities, you can emulate the vulnerabilities and see whether that could be exploitable or not. That's enumeration. So in enumeration, they broadly classified into software development, research concepts, and hardware design. And also you can go with something called as an CW top 25 is what I would suggest you to go with. Whenever you plan for, so let's take the checklist something like this, folks. So first, I wanted to design an ICS network for the client. So now the field devices placement. So first and foremost thing, what you check is a per diem, right? So basing on this, you take a reference model of ICS 410. What's ICS 410? Any idea? ICS 410 is a security reference architecture. Then after the next checklist would be: is there any common weakness, common vulnerabilities that are known? If there are any common vulnerabilities and exposures that are there, if you find that, whether they are exploitable, is there a process to exploit? You have to see whether is there any CWE possibilities there. Then basing on this too, you need to evolve CVSS score. Is that clear? Based on this, understand. So based on this, you have to take a decision like where you have to place what when you design an architecture. So if you see here, IoT security camera vulnerabilities. So let's get on to some hands-on exercise right after this. IoT security camera vulnerabilities. If you see the OT networks, when we take the ICS CERT report, video surveillance market is 45.5 billion in 2020, and in future it is going to be 74.6 billion by 2025. The OT networks are basically, so this will show that like how requirement of the devices and hardware is growing up, and especially for the video surveillance kind of an equipment. The challenge comes because a decade before, the OT technologies and OT networks were designed in a different way. And today we see that there's a different kind of a transformation. And most of the OT environments are now focused on the off-the-shelf technology, including the IT machines and IoT devices are being used. So earlier, the field devices or the edge devices are also like based on a servo motor or some kind of an to be deployed. Now you have an IoT devices that are being deployed as an edge devices, and from that, instead of using a controller directly, they started polling that onto the particular IT server or machine. So that's how they control right from the software stack. Now, Zoomi Networks has discovered and disclosed 3 IP surveillance camera vulnerabilities for companies which have peer-to-peer functionality as one of the vulnerability that they have found, and then as a remote access to the audio and video stream. So this can, if the remote access is allowed on these cameras, which would actually give a chance to the attacker also. They are examined cameras of 2 brands like Reolink and Protec Lab, and the Reolink develops its own P2P functionality than the Protec. I would suggest you to read about a case study called Verkada Security Breach, camera breach, where the P2P vulnerabilities are being exploited. In the month of March in 2021, has affected the vendors called Verkada as a manufacturer. The outcome was that the perpetrators have gained access to 150,000 cameras across the world. How would the attackers would come to know about these cameras, folks? And most of the unauthorized viewing of the images inside the hospitals, inside the jails, inside the manufacturing facilities brought to home brought home the risks involved leveraging the IoT devices. P2P architecture like IoT camera vulnerability, P2P architecture used for a remote video viewing is similar across the different vendors, including the Reolink and Protec. So we'll do some exercise related to it now. For this, you don't need to identify, you don't need to use any of the virtual machines. You can do this exercise on your, because it's simple browser based exercise, what we are going to do here right now. So you can do it on any of the browsers, even on the host machine you can do it. So open a new tab. Let's go for the wild goose chase. So let's say, how do the hackers come to know that there are websites, the web cameras or the video surveillance cameras are there? So how to find that, right? All right. So now the site I have opened is called sanchodhan.com. So you can actually log in with your Gmail ID into it. Without login also, you can do a search. So I would suggest you to actually go with the login access, use the login access. So create your own account. So what we do right now is we'll check Yokogawa Center. Right, folks, so you are there on the browser. So let's try with this and give this in this way. Let's try as a center. So Microtech, see you across the different countries based on different IP port numbers. So how many ports I've told you starting at this session? A computer has 65,535 ports, out of which these are the ports which are tagged with the word called as center. Across the world, these are all sources which are open. There is an FTP service that is open on this particular server. So what is an enumeration is what I'll show you in a short while. But right now we'll find only the vulnerable devices. So there are port number 21 which is open. So now let's find out first of all what is this is all about. It belongs to, it is IP address, it is connected with the Virgin Media, it is based out of UK, and this is the IP address. Now these are the technologies that are being used. So we have to see, the question is very simple. You have to find a Yokogawa center end of the day. So that's your target, maybe. So it's like a wild goose chase. How many devices are being using that particular IP addresses are there with the using those IP addresses where these devices are being deployed. So we don't know as of now. But how the hacker will do is, hacker has utmost patience. He'll do a research on the overall available, which is openly available product that is there. So according to the list. Now you see here, somebody's desktop is also exposed to the internet. See here? Their device. Could you tell me a product model number of Yokogawa? A model number. And there's another way also to find this. I'll show you the next tool in some time. So what I want you to do is, first and foremost, example, let me show you a walkthrough exercise for this. And after that, you will go ahead, choose any one brand. If you don't find one, then try the other one, But I want you to ultimately give me the same kind of explanation what I'm going to show you right here. So get that same kind of an understanding. So now what I'm doing right now here is, there is an board Internexa, there's a host name, there's a Microtech router is there. So first of all, what is this Microtech? I know what it is, but just the way how a hacker works, I'm showing you that and understand. The Microtech is a routers and wireless manufacturing company, right? So what is this board Centum Internexa? Not much details available. Copy this IP address and try to open this IP itself and see. Takes time. So it's in Bogota, Colombia. Then 1723 is the port number. Now let me try to understand what is this port number 1723 used for. Port 1723 used for point to point PPTP in tunneling. So it could be possibly a VPN router, and so this is the information. Now what I would like to know is, first and foremost, let's see whether this is working or not. So first thing is that I found the information from the shodhan.io website, and then what I have done is I started learning right from here. So what is this all about? I see here one more important information that I have got, that is router operating system. I'm not actually probing into anything. You are giving me the whole information. So you have put your device online, and on your device I started getting this. So this is a Microtech. Okay, see, now I got the router details also. So I started something like this. Let me go systematic and show you once again that you see the the desktop. You also prepare a similar kind of a thing, right? Whatever I'm typing here, also I would suggest you to prepare the document from your side also, and I'll give you the link so that quickly have a look at your understanding the activity that you've done. So the target IP address I've taken is 192.149.128.121. I'm not penetrating into anybody's network, or I'm not tampering this IP address. All I'm doing is whatever the information that unknowingly this particular IP address, I don't know anything else other than just the IP address. When I've done a wild goose chase, right? So when I started looking out for the centum based as a keyword, so I got this information, right? So you see here, all I got is this IP address. From this IP address, I came to know that there is a Microtech router is there, and I checked Microtech router. This is the model number. See here, there is an operating system information is also there here, router OS. So when I checked that, it said that this is an Microtech router 1009. So this is the information. Till this point I was reached. Now I tried to open this on 1723 port. There I don't know what is the 1723 port. So I asked Google again to help me out. Google said that it is 1723 is the VPN port. So yeah, let me write what I got. So then what I came to know is that this is product code and or the detailed information about this particular model number. It's an Ethernet router. Information is an Ethernet with the gigabit ports. So when I started, I don't know anything about it. I slowly started checking on each one of them. So then I came to know this is what it is, and I'll keep this information with me for a moment. Then this open ports are 1723, which is you can think that I'm just doing a profiling based on a wild goose, wild chase, whatever I've done. So based on that, I started now doing a profiling on a particular target. So additional details could be becomes this particular Sabagota, Colombia. So what is this autonomous system number? I'll discuss with you on this a little later. Discussion comes up about the network. Right? So this is what it is, and then the port number is 123. It's an NTP network protocol. So 123. So I find that there is 123 protocol is there. It's NTP. Then I go with next details. It's 161 UDP, which one. Now let's check quickly over here also. Port 161 is used for default for port for SNMP queries. So broadcasting takes place. Simple network management protocol. So we came to know, we know nothing when we know just the IP address of the target, but thereafter we know the router operating system, what model is that, and what all the what models are attached to it, and what all the open ports that are there, model number attached to it, and model ports are there, and then to whom it belongs to, and what is an autonomous system number. Autonomous system number is nothing but each network is identified across the internet individually with a specific number called as an autonomous system number. I'll explain you when I get into the network part. And after that, that's it. 179 is one more port that is open. Let's know what is this port is all about. 179 is for BGP. So then let's go to the CVE database. So now what I'm doing is, no name I started journey. Now I got this information. So let's see with this particular model number. Oh, yeah. What I would do is, first of all, I'll check the IP reputation. I'll go with the IP reputation. So for this particular model number, what kind of an for this particular IP address, what kind of a reputation do we got? For this, we go to a particular website called Aristotle. Here we search the IP address. Yeah, it's a clean IP address. And let's see the CVE details. Right from IP address we can try. At times, CV is also reported based on the IP address. Then go with the model number. As such, the model, based on the model, there is nothing there. You can check CW. Now let's see, is there any exploits that are there for the model. For this, we go to a website called exploitdb.com. There are a couple of exploits are there related to Microtech. You see here, exploit is nothing but a code. So, for example, I'll show you an easy way. So there is a known vulnerability that is there. To exploit that, this is the code. Using this code, you can exploit it. Here the CVE number is also mentioned here for each one of this. So exploit you need to find. So exploit availability. Similar way, 1723 port number, what all the possible exploitations are there. You have to copy these CVEs as they are applicable. So if it is not a latest one, between 4 or 5 years before, you need not really worry because it's now been patched. But still, there could be something that might left over. So for that purpose, you need to check that cross check. But usually, that shouldn't be a problem most of the times. In real time scenario, they are patched up. These are the vulnerabilities. In similar way, you can check the CVEs. With those vulnerabilities, for example, improper access as the remote attackers launch a denial of service. So, according to CVE, there is a weightage that is given to for that. This is what you can learn correlating with this. So, like this, you need to go with each one of the port. So, the first port which I checked is port number 1723. So, like this, I would suggest you to continue for other ports, whatever. Take a particular target, pick up a target by yourself, and start doing this kind of check. Report, identify those vulnerabilities in a notepad or a word, whatever it is, and let me know once it is done. Is that clear? Country-based distributions. So these devices are not supposed to be online at all. These devices are online because of could be possibly the man-made mistake in terms of configuration. Default configurations are being not removed. They are second cause. Maybe the vulnerabilities which are there have been not cited or identified by the owners of those assets, because of which these vulnerable devices are in the eyes of the hackers, the eyes of the attackers. The idea behind this activity is to give you an exposure by using this particular search engine.
Just a quick info, guys. Test your knowledge of cybersecurity by answering this question. What is Code Red? A. An antivirus program. B. A photo editing software. C. A computer virus. D. A video editing software. Comment your answer in the comment section below. Subscribe to Intellipaat to know the right answer. Now, let's continue with the session. Just a quick info, guys. If you want to make a career in cybersecurity, then Intellipaat has a post-graduation certification in cybersecurity and ethical hacking by ENICT Academy, MNIT Jaipur. This course is of very high quality and cost-effective, as it is taught by MNIT professors and industry experts.
You can find out how the vulnerable devices will fall into the eyes of an attacker. Is it clear? Any questions? So that's about the medical devices that are there. So there are the highest 2021, 537 ICS advisories were disclosed, and close to about 25 medical devices. The ICS cert medical advisories, you see, one bundle is like one is a medical device based attack, second is an attack based on the medical data. So there are two different types of attacks that we have seen. One is attack on the devices, second is attack on the data. So this is a ICS cert, famous ICS cert advisories that you find, whatever I've shown you this morning. So that's about the vulnerable devices that are there online, various types of vulnerable devices that are there online. We're going to talk about one of the case studies. Can someone talk on US colonial pipeline attack? What was this attack and where it was started? Who has started this? What kind of an effect does the pipeline system or the governments have undergone in US because of this attack? Just taken place in 2021. US colonial pipeline attack. What is this attack all about? Ransomware was attacked on US colonial pipeline. And so just to take a brief look at the ransomware. Can somebody tell me what is exactly ransomware is all about and how does it impact? For example, we have a file with .doc format, right? So which will be changed to .x1b. So what is this x1b format or .abc format, right? .wza format or xyz format. What is this all about? There is no extensions by these names at all, by these extensions at all. But why they create is to simply to obfuscate. This is an obfuscation technique. Along with the encryption, they use it. So because of which basically the attacks on the industrial organizations are rising heavy. So where once the file gets infected, entire formats would be changed, and you need to have a decryption key to get the data back onto the doc format or original format. That's the reason why ransomware attack has become more complex. Most of the organizations are undergoing the attack these days. Several years we see that, especially from 2019 to 20, it is 500% is what was rise. High growth rate that observed in 2021 is 116% is the overall rise that we have found. So let's see a couple of organizations notably which has undergone the ICS systems which are undergone the attack and what's the size of the attack. Kia Motors automobile manufacturer has undergone the attack. A ransom group called Doppelpay, and the demand was $20 million. Not sure how much was paid. Then the Acer, one of the largest ransomware attacks in the history, you can say that. The computer manufacturer, there is a group called Rebel who was attacked on Acer computers and took control over the sensitive information. Ransomware group Rebel demanded for a $50 million, which had been paid. Then the CNA Financials, cyber security insurance provider, had been attacked by a group called Fenex. The CNA Financials have paid close to $40 million not to leak the information, whatever they have extracted, and also to release their system. Then you find the racetrack petroleum, retail gasoline, club, and ransom paid is unknown. Then you have a Quanta, which is in April 2021. The major groups we are talking about, folks, in 2021. Revel is the again same group. Is the same group which is asked for $50 million and not sure how much was paid. So they target the high value. If you see, all of this is high value: 20 million, 50 million, 40 million, and this is not known. This because it's a petroleum industry. Expectations would be too high, and more than 50 million, you can expect what could be the highest of it. Colonial Pipeline was attacked. There is U.S. Colonial Pipeline attacked by a group called DarkSide, and 4.4 million US dollars were paid by the US government, by the US. Then Brentag, a chemical distribution company, 7.5 million ransomware was asked, and 4.4 was paid to the DarkSide. It was same in the month of May. Then there is a cybersecurity insurance provider group called Avedon have launched ransomware paid unknown. Irish Department of Healthcare Services, the ransom group Conti, they are the people who has got this. And then the JBS Global Meat Protein Producer, which has been again attacked by Rebel, was got 11 million US dollars. So Rebel had been quite active last year. Say that. So that's a kind of attacks that happen on our industrial control systems, especially the ransomware. People think that ransomware attacks are majorly targeted on the IT companies. So no, much more higher. IT companies will not pay this size of amounts, because for them they have the DLP systems which are in place, data leakage protection system platform. So they'll have a minimal data loss, they can recover their data. They don't ask for the data. But when you talk about the production related data on any of these ICS units, there is a challenge over here. These attacks have reached to the new heights in the May. Ransomware attack, the Colonial Pipeline, a company that transports of 45% of the US East Coast fuel supply. The attack affected some of the company IT systems initially, and in response, the company took certain systems offline to contain threat temporarily, halting all the pipeline. Whereas the OT network was not directly breached, the outcome was a 6-day period with gas shortages have come. Another ransomware attack is a JBS Foods, a major meat processing company, US. One more facility, UK, US, Australia, and UK. JBS Foods have their business spread across. Threat to our food supply was also hit the headlines significantly. It was raising the ransomware awareness for the public, governments, and the critical infrastructure stakeholders. These attacks are executed against the operational systems majorly, because they are the high value targets, and the moment they hit this industrial control systems, for example, a water supply, think that the entire there are multiple times the water on a water supply management system in US, the attacks have been taking place, but unfortunately they couldn't get succeeded. But yes, even the smart grid. So these attacks are quite they take place in the operational systems, and it's very important to protect the operational systems equally to the IT system. The outages and the media attention they generate cybersecurity discussions in the boardrooms around the world. It's also critical that all organizations, OT systems understand how the modern ransomware attacks do take place. The popular ransomware service markets are Fire Market, Forum. But the most important thing is that in the ransomware, the losses are escalating. The payments against the demand. For example, somebody asks 100%, so 100 as an amount. Close to about 43% of this is being paid at an average when you take an average. So it's a very huge amount, like paying back 43%. Now, you compare and tell me, like as I explained to you earlier, the hackers, if they hack an individual account, the kind of money what they get, the hackers, when they attack industrial control system, and the kind of amount they get is really high. There is no comparison between these two. They are anything but lightweight in terms of how they conduct their operations. Ransomware groups are large enough to work independently and carry out every step of an attack themselves. And this approach is a very any idea what is a ransomware as a service? Have you ever heard anyone? So ransomware people basically over internet, like the marketplaces like Empire, right? So let me just show you if it is active. Maybe you could see. According to this website, there's an ultimate blackmail Bitcoin ransomware. Ransomware is editable. You can change your own amount of coin. So then you can send this ransomware. So there's a ready ransomware file that is available. These are all postings that are there related to a ransomware. This is how the ransomware, how the option that they give to sell ransomware as a service. This is the kind of services that are being sold online, where ransomware as a service. See here, this guy has put a posting that against the Bitcoin, again to the XMR, Tron coins. So he'd be giving this particular ransomware, which is compatible to work with the docx format. You can encrypt it to become a prototype of example.com or whatever reference that he has given there. Victim will have no choice but to contact you via email. So the idea over here is with this ransomware, you have option to have it in a USB auto installable with the time frame. So you can install it on a portable USB and it will automatically boot and start encrypting the file. So the idea is if they wanted to launch this kind of an attack on a corporate, so one rogue employee, compromising one particular rogue employee of making one employee as a rogue employee within the organization, they can compromise the entire systems, the whole thought process behind this. So ransomware as a service is a successful business model on the dark web, dark market, black markets. So which involves many players, which is gaining a lot of popularity these days. And nevertheless, including the industrial systems, I've shown you the industrial the organizations which are strong with a strong industrial systems usage are the ones which have undergone a big size attacks. So, like the well-known markets in the dark web for this is the Empire market, and then a Thorum market, a Silk Road. Before they are anything but a lightweight in terms of how to conduct their operations, ransomware groups are large enough to work independently themselves, and they have ability to which involves many players, because anyone who wanted to make money working in an organization, let's say he is not happy and not satisfied with the salary, so he wants to make some extra money, and that is in an illegal way. So those kind of people become a target for the dark web criminals. So those people, by luring them with giving an option, giving an trying to attract them, so to join into the ransomware community, and they'll start spreading this through that person into that organization. So this is how majorly it happens, majority of the times. And it's a serious criminal offense in almost all the countries today to be a conduit for such kind of attacks, expecting the money. So one of the recent attacks that we have seen is DarkSide, a group made famous by its attack on a colonial pipeline, where the US government has come down and they have paid almost close to about 4.4 million USD, whereas the ask was around 7.5. 7.5 was the ask. These groups are like a drug cartels, motivated by profit and involving multiple unrelated parties acting together within the ecosystem. Structure is very fluid and volatile. You cannot go through one particular person. Today, he would be used a second day. You'll never even assume, like a person sitting next to you can also be one of the victim, or cannot be one of the conduit to send this ransomware into your network, into the organization's network. There are different ransomware groups, various combinations of roles and ransom splits that they have. So it is possible, and an experienced malware writers focus on development of a core ransomware code, and then they sell this in bulk to the ransomware agencies. So the sample ransomware ecosystem, if you see, there could be a ransomware group who will coordinate the attack and use the initial access provided by the affiliates or further infiltrate network. So as I told you, one of the employee who wants to make around $50,000 on an urgent basis, right? A 50K USD. Ransomware person will give him an offer that I'll pay you $50,000. First of all, first and initially, as an advance, I'll pay you $10K. For that, what you have to do is you have to, I'm sending you a code, copy that code onto your USB stick and take that USB stick without getting notified by anyone else and insert that USB stick at any point to any of the systems that are there internally. So that's it. Automatically, the entire network will be controlled. So the ransomware split would be like once you have this, receive the ransomware payments from payout for all parties capable of paying significant ransom. Certain groups exclude the victims based on the location and purpose. Monetization strategy is collecting the ransom and splitting them on a 20-40 ratio. Bot masters are another affiliate methods, like where it is easy to breach and sell access to the breach network. Developers and packers targeting monetization strategy. Analysts investigate a target network, highest possible ransom that they are looking at, look for the blackmail material and what kind of victims are being targeted based on that. It is very important. Why a dark web research is important for the organization is because they are running different types of schemes to get to launch an attack on you. You need to have somebody who will be working on this and identifying what kind of a situation is there. Then in the ransomware ecosystem, the another character would be the negotiators or launderers. Negotiate the ransom, launder the cryptocurrency after the ransom is being paid, and they target on the victim targeting. They don't look at the victim targeting at all. The monetization strategy is to sell their services, where they share the revenue on a 60-80 basis. A prime example is kill chain used by Reactive ransomware. Stands out for the speed of its attacks, and most importantly, is Reactive ransomware has an ability to spread across for the lateral movement within the organization. This particular attack has become more popular. The entire world is suffering in the middle of the pandemic, and the hackers started doing their heinous work like hacking the hospitals, healthcare facilities by using these ransomwares and taking their control. So taking them into the control, and they started demanding. If not, they'll be. It's as simple as, for example, in the second wave of the COVID novel coronavirus, if you remember, oxygen has become a vital thing across the world. So it was infecting the lungs, too much of it, and there was a shortfall across the world related to the oxygen. And now, at that particular point in time, somebody launches the ransomware attack and says that if you're not going to pay an X amount, I'm going to shut down the entire oxygen services. So then it will be in minutes, a chaotic situation would be covered, would be there across the hospital. So that's the reason why they don't really bother to pay. Buick estimated to have collected over $150 million in ransom with an average of $750,000 per each victim, each one of the hospital. The largest confirmed payment is around 2,200 bitcoins, approximately $34 million by then was collected. So in a step-by-step process, like it starts with a phishing mail, it comes in, then it loads a specific software called as a Bazaar loader, then runs a Cobalt Strike deployment, then the domain discovery takes place, then the zero login against the domain controller, then the additional assets will be discovered, and then the ransomware will be deployed across all those assets. Recommendation is it's very important to select the cameras being in place, or maybe the right kind of a vendor. So right from the do not go for something which is not properly quality checked. There's no proper quality management is there. Deploy the network monitoring system before deploying the IoT devices. Reduce the attack surface area. So we'll talk about it more in detail as we move forward to the next chapters. So what is an attack surface area? It is nothing but a blueprint layout, like for a building, for a property, how you have a layout, right? So a blueprint layout. In a similar way, you have a layout in the attack surface area, and you have to reduce that attack surface area. Malware infection prevention. OT networking monitoring tools, implementing the network segmentation between the enterprise network and the OT network, using the threat intelligence to get the feed about it, secure remote access, adopting a post-breach mindset always. That means assumption of breach. If you remember, starting of this session, I said about assumption of breach. So looking, fixing yourself, like at some point in time, definitely I'll undergo the attack. To what extent I am prepared? What is the strength do I have? What kind of a weakness do I have? This kind of a mindset. And then disaster recovery planning. So all of this put together as the right recommendations. So, folks, I would suggest all of you to pay attention for the next 5 minutes completely on what we are discussing here. This is a very important point in terms of implementing any type of security, not just cybersecurity. So, least privilege is the first one. That means if I need to do the activity, an X activity within the organization, so whatever the best possible privilege, that means which wouldn't give any supervisory or administrative or the root access. So those kind of privileges limited to my job role, limited, and that too, where I need to take a two-step authentication to perform certain special tasks, other than which is not going to you need to look at it in a different way. Whether whatever the action that I'm going to do or the activity that I'm going to do within the organization or environment within the ecosystem of the organization or within the work environment, is it going to impact? So what is the impact level? So each of these administrative actions or supervisory actions, I have to classify and identify, okay, this is the action which would impact an individual, this would be impacting a group, this would be impacting a community or the entire environment itself. So basing on that, we have to define the least privilege. For this, a readout I would suggest for today and which I would like to discuss with you tomorrow is DREAD. Have you ever heard about this word? DREAD. What is DREAD? Based on DREAD, so you need to identify, like if an impact or if a damage takes place with this particular privilege, what would be the effect? There are two different types of authentication and authorization mechanisms we have, especially when you assign the privileges to someone. There are two methods or two approaches that you could take. One is a coarse grain. It's a coarse grain approach. And second is an fine grain and coarse grain. So coarse grain is an example that all of you who are attending this particular program as of now, make them into sets or into groups and start assigning the privileges. Okay, this particular group A, 1 to 10 people in this session, or 1 to 5 people or 7 people in this session is one group. Second group B, third group B, C, D. So A group will be able to access level 1 folders of the shared server, or maybe they can have an access related to any of these machines that are connected to the systems to this particular network, to this particular. So I make the users into groups, and then I can divide those groups into a next level that is called as an units, which is called as an organization units. That's one way of doing it. Second way is I handpick each one of you, and I assign a privilege to each one of you individually. So this is what we call it as in fine grain. So now the challenge is, okay, if it is a 5 employees, 10 employees, fine. How about 100,000 employees organization? For that, you have the IDAM solution. For that, you have the teams, specific teams itself within the corporate organizations which have been taken or which are positioned, and the jobs are basically to support this identity and access management. IDAM stands for Identity and Access Management. So there are the teams, like how you have a SOC team, how you have the red team, blue team, right, within the organization, or information security or a GRC teams. In a similar way, you have an IDAM team. So their job itself is to handle this. And this team was earlier as a part of the system engineering or system administration department. But now it is a different way. Now we have to understand the NOC, Network Operations Center, system engineering, system administration, everybody has their own jobs to do. Along with that, security has become a profile. Earlier, firewall is also under the network or NOC teams, but today it is explicitly being defined. So it's very important to implement an IDA so that the one which I said, Mr. Mayank, take an high altitude and take a bird view. So the solutions what were referred as an individual solutions that will fall in one of these, which I'm going to explain you. So broadly, if you look at it from a top angle, this is what it looks like. One is the least privilege. Second is fail close versus fail open condition. Fail close versus fail open condition. What does it mean? You need to, while doing auditing, while conducting the analysis, risk analysis, security, vulnerability analysis, threat analysis, there are three different types: vulnerability, threat, and risk. Though we are going to deal with it later more in detail, and even I was, as per the schedule, as per the curriculum, I am supposed to explain this concept later. But as I am using time and again, let me explain you. We know that vulnerability is a weakness, threat is a possibility or a possible exploitation that it can take place on vulnerability, and risk is the larger size of the impact. So how do you calculate this? It's a simple way. Risk is equal to threats into vulnerabilities. The number of threats that you have and number of vulnerabilities that you have. Or you can, in a reverse, we can say that vulnerability into threats is what risk is all about. So that's what exactly it is, threat. So now, fail open versus fail close condition. When we talk about it, let's say, for your easy understanding, I'm giving this example. You have a server, right? So let's assume that this is the server and there is an application that is deployed on the server. There is an application that is deployed on the server. It's an application. Could be a web application, website, whatever you want to name it and call it. So it could be on this server, you have a web application or a general application that is deployed and which has a public access. Let's say. Before to this, what all now different kinds of firewalls, routers, network elements, switches that are there. That infrastructure we are not going to discuss over here. The public interfacing based server, let's say, or even the internal server also, you can call it as. So this server would go back to database to query on any of the input request that comes in. Example. So there is an input request that comes in for this any of the input. For example, you visit Amazon.com as a website, check for a particular product, apply the filters, then you are querying. So what you are doing technically is you are querying with that eBay, with that Amazon.com, whatever the e-commerce site, and you are trying to identify the list of things that you want. So in a similar way, when somebody queries, sends an input, it goes there, and with the database it will query and bring the results back. This is what it happens at the back end. Now, what is this fail open versus fail close? When somebody tries to open that web application and apply the filter or scoop the details or search for the details, it has failed to open. It has failed to open. So it did not open at all. When you go back and check why it got failed open. So the reason is, failed to open. The reason is this database server is having a capacity of 20,000 connections per minute. Let's say the capacity is 20,000 connections per minute or per server, let's say. So for the server, the maximum number of connections it can handle parallelly with an average of 100 KB PS. So this is 100 KB usage per second. Say this is how. Whether you use a WhatsApp, whether you use a Telegram, whether you use any kind of messengers or Facebook, Twitter, the server capacities at the back end is basically calculated based on this, like how many MIPS, so how many million instructions per second can it take, right? So example I'm giving you, a 20K is 20K request is what this database server can take, but what you have received already is overshooted 20K. So whatever the connections that are coming in, it has opened connections with this database server, but in this code, there is an error called as a loopback error. So it opens, but it doesn't close, because of which the connections or all 20,000 connections are there, and a legitimate user, when he tries, is not able to open. It's a fail open condition. It's a fail to open. And in this situation, it becomes very easy for someone to launch and buffer overflow attack. So he'll be, instead of sending a 20K request, he will be sending a 40K request, the attacker, per second. Then automatically server will go down. It's a fail open condition, and because of the fail close situation. So it failed to close. That's why it failed to open. That's the condition how it works. So you need to ensure that all your servers or your applications are complying with fail close versus fail open. And third one would be implementing the defense in depth, implementing DID, defense in depth. So you have a fortress. Let's say you have the treasure here, and on top of it, you have one more wall, and then on top of it, you have one more wall, and on top of it, you build one more wall. So it's a fortress basically, and then you put fence, then you have put one opening. So now you say that you have a security guard here, you have a dog here, whatever. So what you are saying is, right now I have a firewall here. This place I have a firewall, and in this place I have an internal intrusion detection IDS and IPS system I have implemented again explicitly over here. Next generation IDS and IPS I have implemented. Then I have this is what a network layer. This is what a system layer. This is a system layer. That's nothing but the attacker has already reached to the system level here. Then this is an application. It's a data store or a directory or a folder level. This is the ultimate data treasure. So here you can implement who is authorized to access, who is not authorized to access. The first condition, right? So then what is the condition, the rule that you need to be set to access this data store that can be applied over here? Then whatever the authorization or the access controls that you need to implement, you can implement that at application level. So with the login credentials. At a system level, you can implement the host-based intrusion detection system, HIDS, host-based intrusion detection system. So like this, at each one of this layer, you need to implement. That's what we call it as an defense in depth. And the fourth one, the part of your bird's eye view, when you take a bird's view on the overall security. So is that separation of duties. What is the separation of duties? Separation of duties is nothing but I've been handling the X client, and you know that my organization believes only in me, that there is a zero compliance for last 2 years while I was handling this client. So that's the reason why my organization, my manager, only wants me to handle this. It's good. It's good that we're maintaining a balance. We are maintaining, a very good relationship with the client, and we are ensuring that there's nothing going to be wrong, and the client is satisfied end of the day. But the point is that it's turning out to be indispensable and most important. And unfortunately, the kind of privileges that we assign unknowingly, so by not separating the duties from time to time and shuffling the duties within, and providing a mandatory leave, like one cannot stick on to one particular project for a longer term for obvious reasons. That's security is one of the best reasons that you could take. So there should be a mandatory leave. So 10 months I had been handling on-site a client account. And the 11th month, I need to go on leave. A mandatory leave has to be sanctioned to me, so that after the leave, I'll be rejoining at a different place, and there is gap that takes place, and there'll be a new resource that will be handling this particular. Then there should be a shuffling of this activity. So implementing this broadly, actually, and how best and how quick, like what could be the scheduling, what could be the time framing that you could implement on this, is what basing on which basically you can understand and implement, how the human resources related issues could be sorted. So once you implement, you take care of this, majority of your human interface related activities will be going down. And more importantly, the cybersecurity awareness program, giving that cybersecurity awareness program. Money is important for everyone, but the point is that they have to understand that it should not bring them down completely for the lifetime. So these ransomware attacks, I can't name out the organizations which I dealt with as a part of consulting and doing assessment, a lot of organizations which have undergone this kind of a rogue employee attacks, which is one of the biggest threats that we have. Throughout my experience, what I've seen is these network elements are the ones which you could call as in cornerstones of your data pathways. Why do I call it as in cornerstones of your data pathway? Whenever, when you're reaching to one point to the other point during your travel, there should be some kind of data points that you need to, or waypoints that you'll be set. Whatever the waypoints that you have set, these waypoints are, the coordinating points for one point, one place to the other place. In a similar way, on the data front also, whenever the data communication goes on, there'll be several hops that you'll be going through to reach a data to the end destination. To make it simple and make you understand in a simple way, if you look at this, so when you just do a simple trace road to any of the website or maybe you see here, there are a number of hops that's going through. It starts from my local router. From here, it's taking the next hop, and from here it went to the ISP. From here, so there's a particular time that is identified here. So totally there are 64 hops I need to take. That is 64 waypoints I have to touch. So all those waypoints are on my data pathway. In this pathway, it is either a router or a firewall. All the way, this is how multiple paths is passing through. So it runs in this way. Basically, whatever you're seeing right now. See here, completely a set of hops are not responding at all. It doesn't mean that it is dropping the packet here. It is not responding back to you. When you call me with the name Vinod, can you please explain this? I'm not responding, hey, I'm Vinod here, but I'm passing this information to the next hop. So it is nothing but I'm not broadcasting myself on a particular protocol. Why am I not broadcasting? This could be a critical network element. It could be a critical hop where there will be multiple other data paths from here. Multiple other data paths might be going from these points. So this is like a junction point. Could be in a data pathway. So now there are critical services or critical routing or switching services that are running here. If they disclose this information, broadcast this information, along with this, hacker might also launch or put these particular critical routers and firewalls also onto his list for attacking. So this is the way how usually the attackers would also find. So to identify this kind of broadcasting, attackers will use an ARP protocol, identifying with an ARP protocol, which is called as an address resolution protocol. Using that protocol, the hackers would easily identify overall broadcasting nearby. So that's the reason why they don't want to broadcast or reply back to a particular protocol called as an ICMP. So please read about what is an ICMP protocol. As we move on, we'll discuss about it tomorrow. How is it useful? So that's about networking. I would suggest you to watch offline this particular to get a bit of fundamentals, and which I like this YouTube video, which would give you better insights. So open systems network connection. Open systems network connection is nothing but, for example, let's say when we talk about human anatomy, so we talk about each one of the organ, each one of the parts there, which could be identified as a layer wise, right? So in a similar way, to communicate between two endpoints between these networks, we have multiple layers that are placed across to communicate between these two endpoints. Okay, physical layer is where either your cable or your wireless would connect, your wireless network. Whatever you connected, it's happening at a physical layer. Over here, the communication would go on in bits. So we'll discuss about it a little later. Then comes a data link layer, which is where you get into the frames. Communication takes place in frames. Then comes the network layer. This is where, so this doesn't have any specific direction. The direction is given by this guy, this particular layer. It's a network layer. This is where the IP, TCP IP would come in place. TCP the IP configuration that is there on your laptops or on any of your devices that sits on the network layer. Then comes transport layer. This is where how the transport should go on from one endpoint to the other endpoint has been defined over here. So then comes after the transport layer, you have a session layer. So this is where the transport TLS protocol or SSL, all of this would work, TLS protocol. And then comes a session layer. This is where now the session would take place. In this session, something like and two endpoints when they talk to each other. Like for example, Teams activity that's happening for 4 hours every day is a session. So like a similar kind of a session would be established between two endpoints when they are talking to each other. So that's what the job of a session layer. And then what if it is in PDF file, if it is in doc file, if it is in PPT file, so identifying that extension and picking that library from the operating system and third-party libraries and presenting them properly onto the application is the job of the presentation. So usually the application layer, presentation layer, and session layer are combined together. Whenever you start analyzing, whenever you start conducting the analysis, all of these three layers comprised as one output, it will be shown. We'll be seeing that how exactly this will be shown. So that's about an OSI model. So OSI model is something like instead of each country using, for example, let's say we all from different countries, we are connected on Teams today. And this Teams is relied on all these OSI layers, right? So this communication is relied on the OSI layers. So each one of this, we use a different pattern, a different engineering mechanism. It becomes we will not be able to synchronize with each other. So the sync will not be there. For this purpose, we have defined a common framework called as an open system interconnection. So under which we have defined there will be 7 layers. And in this, out of the 7 layers, we'll be communicating with each other and talking to each other. So this is how this is defined. So broadly, the OSI model breaks network into a smaller and simpler fragments. That's why the OSI model has been used and it's been got popularized across and started taking an implementation. Before to that, it was just the serial-based cable-based communication is to take place. And then the OSI model also facilitates standardization of network components and will also allow the multiple vendors, irrespective whether D-Link, Cisco, Juniper, FortiGate, Checkpoint, whatever you just name it. So all of these vendors would fall back and follow on one language to speak with each other. That's an OSI model. OSI model allows the different types of network hardware and software to communicate with each other. OSI model prevents the changes in one layer from one layer to the other layer, affecting the other layers so that they can develop more quickly. OSI model breaks the network communication into simpler parts or smaller parts and make learning easy. So that's the OSI model is all about. Let's discuss about each one of those layers. In an OSI model, the layered architecture, every layer have a specific function. It's like this at a network layer, the TCP/IP and TLS, SSL, and then the session layer, and presentation layer, and application layer. Each one has their own functionalities that needs to be delivered. They communicate with the origination and destination, and they interact, as I said, the origination and between two endpoints, the origination and destination endpoints. To communicate between these two, these layers have a different defined functionality. It begins by using the interaction between an application layer. This is where the first call would go. That's how it will establish. So broadly, we can set this into lower layers and upper layers. So the lower layers are the layers which would handle, right? So physical layer, data link layer. Physical layer is required to transmit the medium in bits and provides a mechanical and electrical specifications like coax cable, could be a fiber, could be a wireless, could be hubs and the repeaters that are there. Then the data link layer consists of data which is in bits into frames, provide hop-to-hop delivery. So that's the activity that takes place in the data link layer and the lower layers. And the network layer, it will move the packet from source to the destination. So it provides an internetworking between two endpoints. Whenever there is an communication takes place between A and B, basically this particular communication would be defined like whether multiple hops would be there. These hops hopping over of this, whatever you have seen, the trace route, those hops. So passing through these hops is what the network layer, especially internetworking with all these hops and connecting them from a hop to hop delivery is a job of the data link layer, and connecting them by using a specific kind of protocol and methodology, like could be a coaxial, could be a wireless, could be a hubs and repeaters, is the work of the physical layer. So this is what a lower layers is comprised of. Is that clear? So broadly, the primitive, right from the primitive stage, if you look at it, like as it explained, the physical layer could be the hubs. So hub and switch communication is what takes place at this place. In a hub communication, whenever there is a communication that comes in externally, it comes through the ISP. From ISP, let's say it is connected to a hub. From there to multiple C1 to C6, C7, or the different clients that are there. So what happens is now typically whatever the packet comes in here, the internal request, that comes in here, this particular request would be broadcasted among all the clients that are connected. For example, someone, let's say Mr. Adam is sending a mail to Vinod, right? It was supposed to Vinod is C1. So the mail is the mail related information is supposed to go to only to the C1, but not to C2 to C7, all of them. But usually in a hub communication, it will broadcast to all of them, so that whoever is relevant to it, he will pick it up, and the rest of all packets will be discarded. And the switch could be another physical layer. So hub, what it does is whatever the input packet that comes in, it will be broadcasted. It will be blasted out, blast that packet information to all the nodes that are there. Because of which, what happens is everybody, let's say we talk about a 1 KB packet, 10 KB, that's okay. But what about 1 GB data that comes in and it has to send this 1 GB? All this will be receiving that 1 GB. Unnecessary throttling. There will be the full tunnel, the funnel size will be completely filled in, right? So that's the disadvantage of a hub communication. Then comes a switch communication. In a switch, we're talking about an unmanaged switch. So whenever a packet comes in, a packet is broken into multiple frames, right? And it reaches to a switch. From here, it will be broadcasted to various the client who is connected to that particular port with a specific IP address. So IP address, based on reading the IP address, basically the two, especially the data link to which port, which system is connected. So those particular systems would be receiving this communication. That's how the switch would work. But the point is that it doesn't know on that particular port, because it works on basing on the physical port interfacing, right? So it doesn't. There is no IP address related information that will be saved here in a normal switch. So there is no database. Like in switches, we call the database as an MIB, Master Information Base. Every switch will have across the world, every managed switch, especially today we have only managed switches. So all those switches will have a database called as an MIB, Master Information Base. So it doesn't have a master information base. It doesn't maintain, or it doesn't tag that this particular user PRA is having this particular MAC address, and this is the IP address that is assigned to it. This kind of record will not be maintained by a normal switch. So this is a disadvantage of the switch communication. So the network would become slow, and it takes longer time. Every time you send a packet, it has to search through each one of these ports, negotiate with each one of these ports, and ask, hey, is this belongs to you? Is this belongs to you or not? So basing on that, individually, it has to check to each one of them, and then it has to send this back, whether this belongs to him or not. It has to verify. Then comes the managed network. Managed network, and a simple way to explain it from the internet right away, it comes to let's take and look at your own networks that are there in and around your enterprises. From internet service provider, it goes to something called as a router. So this is a universal symbol of router. A circle with a cross always means that it's a router. And a router, so there will be a WAN IP address. It will be pointed. There will be two ports would be there to the router. This is a port 1, and this is a port 2. This is called as a WAN port, wide area network port. This is called as a LAN port. And the access control lists are implemented on this router. And the ASN, so autonomous system number, is also configured on the router. This has been assigned. Then from here, it goes to the firewall. Firewall here, what happens is whatever the incoming connection it is coming from ISP, a router will check the ACL, which is called as an access control list in the routers. So after the switches, the routers is the next phase that has evolved, right? So this will actually identify whether whatever the incoming Mr. Shankar is trying to communicate with Vinod, whether his IP address is allowed or not. So that will be checked by the router, and it will send a signal. Technically, you can understand in that way, like the packet would be forwarded to the firewall. Firewall will check, hey, whatever the content that Mr. Shankar is trying to send it to Vinod, whether it is permitted, does it have a sanctity? Is it sanitized? Is there any malicious header? Is there any packets that are there? The firewalls are different types. Please read, please take a minute and spend little time during this training session. Definitely, I would suggest you to take bit time in a day and read about a few readouts that I suggested during the class. And now I suggest that what all the types of firewalls are there. Quickly, please read through that firewalls. So there are different types of firewalls. What is an UTM? What is a next generation firewall? How does it work? So all of this you have to look into it. So firewall would check whether this packet is allowed or disallowed. Then from here it moves. The packet will, the communication will move on to the next level. That is called some tier 1 switching. So this is where the switch would come in. This is where the routing takes place, right? So the zone between this and this, the line between this and this. So that's where the DMZ would come in picture. So now you understood what is DMZ also. So demilitarized zone. And from a tier 1, the communication would go to the tier 2. Tier 1, it will check, okay, this communication has come up. This particular requirement, where it is calling for Vinod, who is a C1, where is the C1 located? And which C1 is he talking about? Is it a C1 with the 10.1.0 series? Is it a C1 with 10.20.0 series? So that's what it will check. And this information about the IP addresses is uploaded or updated to a tier 1 switch, which is called as a core switch. Please remember this, folks. This particular diagram is very important as you move on. When you deploy the Purdue model, the levels of it. So this information, this knowledge is very, very important for you. So it's a core switching level where the HR department or M&A, management and administration, or it will be all your departments are divided over here, and basically according to that there will be a different distributions which is all be allocated for each one of this. Example. So you can say as a department. So it could be a floor, it could be a building, it could be a location where all of those locations put together are connected to a core switch locally, and those core switches will be connected back to one particular core switch, which will be terminated. So this is how this can be arranged. So it's a distribution switch from which the information will be updated back to the core switch. So there will be, for each one of the department, each one of the division, there should be an exclusive distribution network that should be there. It's not just the switch you need to look at, it's nothing but a network. So a network which is an exclusive network for that particular department or a division or the floor or for the location or for that building, a physical network that you define. And from there, it goes and connects to a particular switch. This is all a switch to this particular switch called as this switch is called as an edge switch. It's also called as an VLAN switch because this is where you will implement the VLANs, the actual VLAN. So this VLAN switch will be updated, connected back, cascaded or connected back to a PD, that primary distribution switch. And from this switch, it will be connected back to a tier 1 switch. And this is connected back to a firewall, from there to the router for outbound communication with any of the world. So inside an edge switch, there will be a VLAN 1 example is implemented, VLAN 2 or VLAN 3. VLAN 1 is a production area, VLAN 2 is a maintenance area, VLAN 3 is an operations area. So you can differentiate based on which the IP scopes could be defined. So each one of these IPs or assigned to the clients. Now, based on the VLAN IDs and VLAN tags, which are updated by the edge switch to the distribution switch, the core switch will remember, okay, there are two C1s, three C1s. One C1 is with 10.20.0, one is a 10.10.0, the other is 10.1.0. So there are different clients are there. So it could be, and looks like a C1, but the IP address would be different. So that's how this has been arranged. And this is the managed network. It's a multi-layer approach that we take. So let's tell the network layer how you connect the physical data link and network layers. Yeah. So here we go with the next layer that is called as an heart of these mid and upper layers. That's the overall OSI model, which is called as a transport layer. This is where the reliable process-to-process message delivery and error delivery related information would be handled. This is the heart of the whole process. Why would I call this heart of the whole process? Let me explain you in my own style and way. So let's say from Naveen to Vinod, there is a communication going on, right? From Naveen to Vinod, there is a communication going on. Now, Naveen wants to send, folks, I want all of you, because again, this is all, we need not to be known about this particular, each and every answer. More importantly, it's all about what to do with your interaction and more. That's how we learn quickly, right? So there's something new every day. I keep learning. So please involve yourself in the discussions as well. So let's say Naveen intend to send a 10 MB PDF file to Vinod. Please concentrate. Naveen wants to send a 10 MB, right, PDF file. So 10 MB PDF file to Vinod. Now, Naveen is having 2 Mbps, or let's say 1 Mbps, not even 2 Mbps, but 1 Mbps. Naveen is having 1 Mbps throughput of the bandwidth. So the kind of bandwidth what he has taken is a 1 Mbps. Now, Vinod is having around 756 kbps, 756, which is not there in the world at all today, but still, just for your understanding sake, I put this as 7 kilobytes per second, whereas Naveen is having 1 megabyte per second, right? And Naveen wants to send a 10 MB PDF file to Vinod. Now, the question number one, all of you, question number one, how much time does it take? How much time does it take for Naveen to send this packet to Vinod? And how do you calculate? What is the calculation behind it? Why would it take so much time? What is the reason behind it? And how do you calculate is what I wanted to hear from you. The reason behind it. So as I said, this is the tunnel, this is the bandwidth, it's an internet. So the internet is something like this. Size here, it is wide here, and it is less wide here. Because it is 756, it is 1 Mbps. Now the question is very simple. How much time does it take to transfer this data? Now 1 Mbps is Naveen and 700 KB is Vinod. The first thing what Naveen would do is, hey Vinod, I want to send you a file with 10 MB. A three-way handshake happens between these three, right? Hey Vinod, I want to send you a 1 MB file to you, right? Or maybe a 10 MB file to you. All right, Naveen, I'm set to go with you. You can send me that file. And what is your window size? That means how much is a bandwidth, how much is a capacity do you have to take from my, if I send a packet to you? So this is what we call it as an RWND. That means receiving window size. What is your receiving window size? What is your receiving window size, RWND? This is my receiving window size. Out of 750 KB, 700 KB is available with me as of now. Only one connection I am catering right now, which is of a 50 KB. Apart from that, 700 KB is readily available. All right, then I understand that. I set my congestion window. See here, guys. I set my congestion window as 700 KB. So anything that overshoots, then what I have to do is, I have to, whatever this 10 MB file, I have to chop it. I have to chop it down. You have to understand this way, like I have to slice it down into a size that would accommodate to the 700 KB per second. So in that way, I have to send in a multiple, as a multiple transitional packets, I have to send one after the other. So that's how I divide them into frames. From there to same way, I'll break down into the fragments of a bits, and then I'll be sending that data over here, right? So this is how basically a congestion window size can be set. Okay, 700 KB is what you could receive. I've set that anything over the 700 KB, if I send you, it will drop there. So that's what it is all about. And that's how the congestion window has been set. And now Vinod will also say that, okay, whatever I receive, it should be only 700 KB, not more than that. So anything above to 700 KB, I'll not be able to take it up because my space is already filled. So I'll set this on my side. Setting up this kind of readings at both ends is what we call it as an MTC. So we have two. One is that basing on which we set an MTC, which is a master transmission control or a master transmission unit. So basing on which basically we mentioned that it's an MTC, master transmission unit, which is a maximum count that I could send. Is that clear, folks? Any questions from you? How does it work? Broadly, if you look at this, the autonomous system numbers that you have seen is each one of the network. So think that this is the zone where we are in. So this is Yokogawa, this is Infosys, this is Intel, this could be HP, it could be Dell, different networks you see here. Each one of the network would be assigned with a unique ID called as an autonomous system number. So all these networks put together is connected as an web, which is what we call it as an internet. So all these networks are assigned with unique ID to identify that individually. So anything that goes to a particular ASN number, which is a K is represent this K network is.
Just a quick info, guys. Test your knowledge of cybersecurity by answering this question. What is code red? A. An antivirus program. B. A photo editing software. C. A computer virus. D. A video editing software. Comment your answer in the comment section below. Subscribe to Intellipaat to know the right answer. Now, let's continue with the session. Just a quick info, guys. If you want to make a career in cybersecurity, then Intellipaat has a post-graduation certification in cybersecurity and ethical hacking by ENICT Academy, MNIT Jaipur. This course is of very high quality and cost-effective, as it is taught by MNIT professors and industry experts.
Assigned with an 456 as an autonomous system which is located in US, let's say. So it will check for the path, shortest path that is there. So in a trace route, whatever you see, these are the paths. It will hop over each one of this path and reach to the destination. And each one of these networks are being identified by unique number. That's how the path will be set. How does it route from one destination to the other destination? It depends upon various algorithms that you use. It could be IGMP, it could be an RIP, it could be an OSPF, but majorly it could be an OSPF, and then they implement the BGP protocol, Border Gateway Protocol. Border Gateway Protocol is good in terms of setting up the MTUs and in terms of understanding the stateful routing. Now, the usual thing that is always what we see is, like, let's say if I need to come to your place, so what is the shortest route I could take for this? And that's why we use the Google Maps as well, right? To give us a convenient information to go from one point to another point. It will give one or two or three alternative routes for each one of the destination. So basing on which we can choose which one is the shortest path. Like to go to this particular 456 from, so from India. So it would take, right? So a shortest path, the multiple ways it could go through. One is that it could go through the Asia to Australia, and then Australia to Europe, Europe to US. Or else it could be Asia to Europe, Europe to US. Or it could be Asia to Australia, Australia to US. So any of these combinations could be there in terms of routing. So that's the reason why it will check which one is responding to me, which hop, whether 8 is responding within 1 second or not. If not, I should go with another hop. I should go with another hop, which is responding less than 1 millisecond or 10 milliseconds. That should be an TTL. So now it is time for me to inform you to read a bit about the TTL. TTL stands for time to live. So what is this time to live? So you need to spend a bit of time and understand what is this time to leave, which will actually plays a vital role in terms of identifying what kind of a system is there at the target location. By based on the TTLs, the hackers can even identify what is the operating system that you're using there, right? So what is a version of it can also be precisely be counted by the attackers. So that's how the internet overlay, the network connectivity would work from one to the other. So how does the PDU, protocol data unit, is termed as a single wholesale layer? So typically, a physical layer, the data will be in a form of bits. In a network data link layer, the data is in form of frames. In the network layer, data is in form of packets. In the transport layer, data is in form of segments. So this is what it's all about. Physical layer is in bits, data link layer is in frames, and network layer is in packets, and segment transportation is in segments. This is how the whole combo of this 4 layers put together would work. The form of the packets or the output will be bits, frames, and packets and segments. So from a physical layer, data link layer, and network layer, when you isolate, what happens? Physical layer, the connectivity goes with the cables. In data link layer, the connectivity will go based on the switches and the MAC addresses defined. In the network layer, it will go with the routers and the IP addresses. And a transport layer, it will go with the TCP and UDP protocol. So this is where we call it as a LAN. This is where when a router comes in, we call it as a WAN. This is where, because router would only involve when 2 networks need to connect, right? 2 different networks. And finally, whatever you have seen in the net stack, the services, the ports that are open, I said there are how many ports? 65,535 ports are there, which are provisioned. In an Excel sheet, how many rows do you have? Just check. How many rows do you have in an Excel sheet? So the services, so at the transport layer, it will convert a TCP connection as a service. This is how it will be. It's a part of the OSI model. Synchronizing the bits. There are 2 different types of communication, folks. One is asynchronous communication, second is synchronous communication. Asynchronous communication is nothing but, so anything that, synchronize between 2 endpoints. So when I start sending you the information, once I stop, you will start sending me the information back. This is what we call it as synchronized information. Asynchronous is nothing but it just uses start and stop bits based on which it does. But synchronous is a communication. It depends upon the internal clock. So Vinod started at a 01 epoch time. So please read about what is an epoch time. These are all one-time reads, but some point in time it will definitely touch base with you as a part of your job. Some point, but because the moment you get into security, some point in time you have. So what is this epoch time? Just have a quick read about it. So basically on this epoch time, the internal clocks are synchronized and the synchronized communication would go on. Then the bandwidth could be a broadband with the multiple channels which will share the same medium. There are different types of protocols or methodologies that could be used. One of them is an FDM. This is called as frequency division multiplexing, and there is a time division multiplexing. Within a bandwidth that is available, let's say this is a bandwidth that is available. And I told you on a Naveen side, multiple people are connected, right? Along with Vinod. And Vinod's side also, there are multiple people that are connected along with Naveen. Now, how to set among these 2 is what I said as an MTU will decide whatever it sets among you, because it's a dynamic thing, right? I cannot say that I've set this now and 700 KB should be with me only. There could be somebody else who will be calling to reach Vinod. I cannot deny them. I have to take them also. And same could be the question point would be Naveen. So there will be some other requirement that might be coming in, and new connection will be coming in to Naveen. Naveen cannot say that I already have spared the 700 KB to Vinod. I have no bandwidth. Please don't connect with me. It doesn't work in that way. So they have to connect back with each other. For this, again, it's a constant process of calculating the maximum transmission unit. Depends upon the bandwidth. That's why we say that, hey, look, the bandwidth is too low. I think load is too much on the bandwidth. There's too much of internet usage is happening at office. That's why I think my network is slow. So this is where it comes from, right? So in this transmission methods, you have one called as frequency division multiplexing. So how do we multiplex the available 1 MB bandwidth? How do we multiplex among all these 10 users? Is it based on the frequency at which they are talking to each other? Is it the time division multiplexing? So based on the time, either like he talks at a 0.1 seconds, he talks at a 0.5 seconds, he talks at a 0.10 seconds epoch time, right? So what kind of an time they are talking to each other, basing on which the methodology or the approach would be set, whether it is a frequency division multiplexing, time division multiplexing, or a code division multiplexing, or FTU or MTU, what kind of a methods are being used. Then, apart from the broadband, is the baseband, where the entire communication would be used without any division or multiplexing. It will open as a one tunnel. That's where we use a particular language called as something like this. Now, we are setting an Yokogawa equipment on a particular site or a particular location. Hey, we are setting up a point-to-point P2P 1:1 P2P 1:1 connection between the site and our office. So 1:1 connection that I am establishing, which is what called as a baseband. So which is a dedicated, a full duplex. So which can go. There is no synchronous asynchronous. You don't need to wait till I stop. So you can synchronize with the internal procs and start work. I said these are the functionalities of a data link layer, network layer, transport layer. So I open a website called as quickly. You can also do that. Plus, so I open a netcraft.com website and I open https www.yokogawa.com. So here I'm getting a site report of yokogawa.com website. Oh, look at it. Now this is site rank is at 1,39,376 across, and according to Alexa, and there is an IP geolocation. This is where probably the IP is resolving to this point. So there is a multilateral locations that are there. Not exactly sure what the boundaries, but we can basically possibly take an idea that this could be the geolocation. When I come over here, you'll find IPv4 autonomous system number. This is the number which is assigned to the Yokogawa, right? Just click on this, open it, and it will open that there is an Hurricane Electronic Services which is actually giving the information about this. So what is this? This is a Bogon. So there are connected networks are there. So read about what is in Bogon prefixes. So Hurricane is nothing but like a Verizon, AT&T, could be a Singapore Telecom, right? So they are the service providers, so which are presenting the information on their portals. That's it, the networks related information. You see here, you look at this broadly, folks, whatever I have shown you, the internet, do you see that? The internet overlay diagram, hops to hops. So they are connected to each the multiple networks that are connected. This is how, what we call it as a www web. So this is where I got the ASN number. So please do some research on any one of this and start getting into learning deep into it. So that's one of the exercise that I expect you to do right after this completion of this particular thing. Is it clear on the ASN number? Can I move on? That's what I explained to you about session layer, presentation layer, and application layer, which communicates on a communication channel between two computers. It supports to initiate and terminate the connections. That's the job of the session layer between a local and remote computer. And presentation layer is in what form in which the data is to exchange between two endpoints is what a presentation layer will talk about. Application layer is an application program and the topmost layer of the OSI model. This is how broadly you could find an OSI right in front of you if you wanted to find and see, like you see here, you see there for a human body, you want to identify or do an anatomy analysis, like you have an X-ray, which would give you a see-through of the entire human body, right? In a similar way, you have an MRI, which you have a CTI scan, which is called a CT scan, right? Computer tomographic scan. In a similar way, this is nothing but a tomographic scan of the network. You see the layer 1, physical layer, layer 2, data link layer, layer 3, network layer, layer 4, transport layer. And as I said earlier, session and presentation layer 5 and 6 layers are combined with the application layer 7. That's how the whole process would be shown, because it's one job it has to do put together. Are we clear on this? Any questions? So how is that enterprise network architecture and network demarcation would go on? How does the topologies and switching routing would take place? And what is the TCP, UDP, TCP IP and network security hardware that is there? So when you look at the overview of a security, this is how security would look like, or network architecture would look like. So broadly, and hub communication, which is already explained to you, then there is an enterprise cloud service, remote services that is there. Then the connected or associated networks would be there. Right? Then internally, there could be multiple forms. Like it could be an work area form. There could be like your own internal network assigned to a client, assigned to a vendor, which is working for you, or assigned to your own servers, assigned to your own employees who are working inside. So all of them are clients to the server, right? So that's how the server form with the firewall, and each one of those actually talk to them. So this is how it is distributed. It's not just one firewall or one router. So there could be multiple things. So this is a code switching process of each and every place, which is not explicitly indicated, but this is how what I referred earlier also, how the code switching and routing would take place. And this is where right now you're working from homes, most of the people, and they from a work from home infrastructure, and you connect. This is how the communication would go on from end to end. Enterprise architecture is of 3 layers broadly. So enterprise architecture, look at it broadly. This is the architecture wise. This is how it is. The topology when you look at it. There could be multiple clients, and there's multiple clients, and ACL would be implemented here. Inbound ACL that 1, 2, 3 are allowed or denied or allowed. That means whoever other than this is denied explicitly, right? And these are all the ports which are allowed as an access control that is implemented over here. Then from here, from the router, it moves on to the UTM firewall. This is where you implement a PAT and a NAT. What is a PAT and NAT? So if an incoming communication might be coming on 80, according to the external world, yokogawa.com is on 80 port number, but internally it could be on 90 port number. In this way, what happens is attacker will be targeting on 80 port and he will stop here, whereas internally it is on 90 port. So it has to be redirected and validated at the router and the firewall end, then it will be passed through. So this is where the content filtering will take place. For example, if there is an outbound request going on, somebody trying to show, or let's say Vinod is trying to show YouTube phishing related or a phishing related video to you. According to that, it's a video content which is not allowed as per the corporate policy. So content will be filtered. This is where the stateful packet filtering will take place. So whatever the outbound communication that is going on, it will check with those filters whether this is allowed or denied, basing on which the packet transmission will go on. Then for outbound, the access outbound is blacklisting take place accordingly, and access to inbound whitelisting will be there, like on the UTM front. This is where the UTM C123, like how the ACLs are allowed here. In a similar way, only these IP addresses will be allowed here. And also they will implement an anti-spoofing policy. What is this anti-spoofing policy? First of all, when you talk about an access inbound whitelisting, it's like stateful packet inspection. So whatever the packet that is coming from outside, it will be stalled or stopped over here at a firewall level for a minute or a couple of seconds, and then it will dissect that packet and drill that packet and get inside that packet and check quickly what is there inside. So that's what we call it as an checking of stateful packet inspection of each one of the packets that are incoming packets. Now let's talk about what is anti-spoofing policy. So I say that this is an WAN zone, this is a LAN zone. Folks, I want your interaction here. I say that this highlighted area till here is a LAN zone, right? So or till this point is a LAN zone. I say that this is the zone which is a WAN zone, wide area network zone. Now between this, already people have told that this is a DMZ, demilitarized zone. Now the question is, in this LAN and WAN, there is a specific IP addresses. Here the IP address sequence is 192.168.1.10. The external IP address, anything other than that is an external. That's what, according to the understanding of these switches, whatever the master information base, that the information that is collected, according to that, all the IP addresses will be in a sequence of 192.168.1.0 or 1.1 or 1.2 or in that way, so on and so forth. So that's how it will go on. But by and large, you have explicitly indicated what is your incoming addresses. Anything other than that is by default is not belongs to you, and you'll not allow that to access your network. This is what you're saying here. Now the question is, what if this 192.168.1.10 request to this firewall is supposed to come from inside internally, because it's an internal IP address. What if this 192.168.1.10 is coming from externally through a router? It is not supposed to be, right? It is an internal IP address. It is not supposed to come from outside at all. Yes, no. What is this condition called as an? You are inside Yokogawa and you have been, now your name has been explicitly identified with a unique ID, right? So I use the same unique ID on my name. I'll try to disguise you. What is this called as an? It's nothing but spoofing. So somebody from outside is trying to spoof the IP address of within this sequence and trying to come inside. This is what it is. It's called as an spoofing. So the firewall has an ability of implementing the anti-spoofing policy as well. And also there will be a core switch which will do an inter-VLAN routing. So there could be various networks that you'll be connected to. So you'll be connected to network 1, 2, 3, and 4. So various networks. All of this inter-VLAN routing should happen from one to the other. This is what taken care. That means they should be able to talk to each other. So then from the core switch, again, it goes to the distribution switch, which I told you. According to the VLANs, it will move on to edge switch, related edge switch, and from there to the related access port of that particular system. And from that port, it will be connected to the system. Whatever the communication that comes from outside, this is how it flows and goes in. And once it reaches to the system, here it will check what is that the port that Adam is trying to reach on this particular server. So it's a port number 553. But that port is not allowed, so then it will be dropped there. This is what checked by HITS, Host Intrusion Detection System. This is called as HITS. So once this is done, then the antivirus would check through the system and protect the system. So this is a core point that I would suggest related to enterprise architecture. All right, then what we'll do is we'll open this Wireshark tool and click on Run as Administrator in your virtual machine. Keep it up. So in that, once you open this Wireshark tool, so if it prompts for a software update, just click on Remind Me Later. So then this is the screen what you see, right? The first screen. And here it will list the adapters, what all the adapters that are there. All those adapters will be listed here, right? So out of this, you'll see this pulsating symbol. This is what an interface which is actively working, where there is a traffic over there, right? So now let's move on. So to start now network analysis, what we do is I open a browser. So I've cleared the old cookies so that it will not give an option to maintain any kind of a cache. There should be no cache in the memory, so that it will capture the entire log end to end. So these are all the prefetch information. So remove everything now, view the data. Right. So then I click here on the Ethernet 0. Right. It will prompt for a password of my system because it's a Mac. Right. So it started coming up, sniffing the traffic. Yeah. So I go here and I start capturing altoromutual.com. This website I'm going to tap the traffic of this particular. Already I've captured 8,000 plus events here because there could be a couple of other background services that are running, or could be the DNS querying. Probably that's what it is. So now what I would do is this is the traffic which I got, right? Open as CMD command line. Then what I do is ping altoromutual.com website. Then why I ping this is to capture this IP address. I've captured this IP address now, and here I'm going to apply a filter called as an IP filter. So you see here there's an IP filter with the IP address. So all I've typed here is IP ADDR. Please make a note of it. Please make a note of this filter and paste it in the chat window. IP.ADDR address space is equal to space the whatever the target URL that you are targeting, that particular target URL IP address. Right here, let me open the slide back for you. You see this? So you select any one of this. So then it shows that first layer is a frame. First layer is a frame layer, right? So you see here, this is the frames first layer. Second layer is the Ethernet. This is the Ethernet. Third layer is the Internet protocol. This is the Internet protocol. Fourth layer is a transmission control protocol, no OSM model. This is the transmission control protocol. So the fifth layer is an application layer. Fifth, sixth, and seventh combined put together is an application layer, which is not there here because this is a TCP communication. But when you go to the HTTP communication, you see here you have the seventh layer, which is mixed of all this. So this is how you have to identify. First, right now, what I expect from you is identifying this structure of 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. So then, once you drop down, you'll be finding what kind of an connection is it? It's an Ethernet connection. What kind of an epoch time does it take? Right? What kind of an security method they have used, encapsulated method. So how many frames are there? Totally there are 537 frames are there. And for this in this particular session, this is the frame number assigned as an 5392 is the frame number that is assigned. The length of the frame is 596 bytes. Then HTTP will have a different color coding, and those color codings are what it has displayed here. And then it goes to the Ethernet protocol. Here you will see from whom. So this is my MAC address. You see here, you go to the Ethernet protocol. This is my MAC address. From this MAC address, right, to this MAC address, system name, the communication have gone. And this is the protocol that they have used. So that's a layer 1 and layer 2 analysis what you've done. So this is the source address, this is a destination address, and what port number is being used we'll be finding in the next layer, that is network layer. Here you see here, this is a source IP address, destination IP address. There, source MAC address and destination MAC in data link layer. Here it is source IP address and destination IP address. In the time to leave is 128 here. The port number they're using for this is you could find under the transmission TCP protocol chats, which is a transport protocol, under which you'll be able to find which port number is being used at a source. On my side, it is 25638. On the other side, at our Altoro Mutual website, it is 80, port number 80. Then you find the acknowledgement number. This is the first acknowledgement that I have received, and totally the raw number of the assignment is this. And congestion window size, you see here, I can send up to 1024 packet sizes of window. I have a window cushion of. So calculated window sizes, this is what the calculated window size. Folks, I hope you still remember what I have said some time back. Receiving window size and congestion window size. So this is the communication happening from my end to the server end. My end I have set 1024. And server end, when you check the same thing from the server end below, you'll be knowing here. So below it has put 8912 because that's a server. Server has a much bigger capacity than me. That's why it has put 8912. See, I'm just moving between these two. That's how you need to identify and should see what kind of communication is going on. What is the TCP header? So this is the TCP header information. This is an advanced thing, which I'll let you know a little later. After that, come to a session application presentation. You see here the protocol which is being used, which the connection is keep alive. This is what the session is all about. It is keeping alive. It is not disconnecting. There will be a session ID that will be assigned to me. You see here the server, which server it is using. And session ID is also covered here. And what kind of a format, presentation, in what way should I present? It is in text form, you should present. So that is also shown here. Folks, are you following? This is shown here. And date and time, all of this information is captured here. Is that clear? This is how you do conduct an analysis basing on the OSI model. And even for the Modbus, even for the CAN bus, any of these protocols, it's just a protocol, it will change. But check the procedure of doing connectivity analysis will remains to be same.
Just a quick info, guys. If you want to make a career in cybersecurity, then Intellipaat has a post-graduation certification in cybersecurity and ethical hacking by ENICT Academy, MNIT Jaipur. This course is of very high quality and cost-effective, as it is taught by MNIT professors and industry experts.